Hey, welcome everybody. Last night, you guys may have been watching, I was actually in G-Man's Hangout for quite some time. I mean, literally, probably about an hour or so, and it actually went quite swimmingly. It was fun, actually. I got to admit, I'm liking this new G-Man. He's mellow. I don't know how long it's going to last, but as long as he does, I'm going to keep up on the positive reinforcement that's the kind of the G-Man that I would rather see than the flailing of arms, ranting Plovian G-Man that we've kind of grown to be used to. But anyways, what happened last night is G-Man had asked me to kind of look over his argument about slavery towards Matt Dillahunty and why Matt Dillahunty will not have a debate with him on this. And Positive Godless had sent me I think it was the second time he called in, a video where he was advocating the position of slavery from the Bible. And I think what it boils down to is this. I happen to agree with Matt Dillahunty on this wholeheartedly. His refutation of this was very simple, why he won't debate G-Man. Because this is not something that should be debated. This is a topic that, in my opinion, is full stop wrong. Slavery is full stop wrong. I would not debate somebody who's advocating that slavery is good. I would not debate somebody who's advocating that rape is good. I would not debate somebody who I think that's advocating child molestation is good. Any of these things are not topics that I think should ever be in a debate. They're wrong, period. Now, I'm not an expert on the Bible. I had to actually look into the stuff to see the differences between how Hebrew males were treated as opposed to non-Hebrew males, as opposed to bonded slaves, and there's a lot of nuances here. There's a lot of different words that the Bible uses to define these things. Just in the cursory amount of time I've looked at this, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different words to explain different things: slave, servant, bondservant, worker, laborer, maidservant, slave girl, and the Hebrew counterpart to them. So I'm going to kind of ask you guys to kind of join in here and give me the nuanced details between a servant, a bondservant, or a slave girl as opposed to an actual slave. Because the way I'm reading it, these were actual slaves. These were not indentured servants. These were not bonded bond servants. These were not people working off a debt. These were property. These were non-humans to these people that could be treated any way they wanted. And I cannot, in any moral framework, ever think that that's a good idea. Ever. There's just no possible world that I could ever say, yeah, that's a good idea. Let's do that. Now, I don't know why G-Man does, other than the fact that I think he's obligated to, because his worldview is such that the Bible has to be right under any condition, and he'll do these mental gymnastics in order to promote something as being correct, because it can be no other way to him. The Bible has to be correct, no matter how abominable these things are, no matter how atrocious and morally bankrupt they are. He's going to be okay with it. So I wanted to get that out there initially, that yes, I am absolutely on Matt Dillahunty's side here of the fact that he will not debate him on this. I don't think anybody should, be honest with you. But I do want to talk about some of the aspects of slavery in the Bible, because I am not that aware of it more than the cursory reading that I've already done on it. So I got Wolf here, who knows about this quite more than I do. And Wolf, you've heard G-Man's arguments before. I mean, I know you don't agree with him in any way, shape, or form, but what actually is his argument to say that slavery is a good thing, other than God has commanded it?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Other than the fact that the God has commanded it, God has said slavery is permissible, here's the rules for it. What is G-Man's argument that slavery and punishment in relationship to slavery? He was actually saying in the video, which we'll try to get in here, that you can lash people. He's okay with that. You can punish people the way the Bible tells people to punish them. He's actually advocated the death penalty for people that are homosexual before. So this is not a big surprise. But other than that, why does he think that slavery is a good thing?
During my experiences in conversing with G-Man, right, he has made statements that sort of suggest that he thinks that the Old Testament ethics of the Bible are superior to the modern times of what we have right now. See, what he does is that he takes these like snippets of the Bible that he likes and ignore all the horrible bits, right? For example, in Exodus, right, it talks about how to treat Hebrew slaves, right? Basically, if you have like a Hebrew slave, he's to serve for 6 years, sent for after 7 year, nothing for his freedom. But if he's married afterward, he can. Okay. If he gets married and have like a wife and kids like that the master bestows upon him, he could be like a slave for the rest of his life. And also, just to continue, in Leviticus, it talks about you may purchase male or female slaves from among the foreigners who live among you. You can purchase the children of such foreigners, including those born in your land. Pass them down as inheritance and treat the slaves like this, but not the people of Israel, not your relatives.
Those are the non-Hebrews, right?
Yeah. There's basically there's basically a tribalist mindset there. Like these gracious rules, they're not extended to like non-Hebrew slaves in the Bible. So, I mean, he's responded to this saying that it's the Dillahunty dodge or something, but there's no dodge. Like the context is clear. You treat your
I don't think it's a dodge at all. I mean, you could apply this to any group and say, the way I'm reading this is, okay, we're going to have these special rules for people that are the same race as I am or culture, and then we have these rules for non-members of that. And you can apply that to anything. I was mentioning before, you were talking to me before, this is exactly what the Black Hebrew Israelites does, only they change it to, okay, we're gonna have slavery for white people, but slavery for anybody of African descent is bad.
Right.
Because they actually do advocate for white slavery. They think that the white man will be their slave at some point.
Oh yeah. The Black Hebrew Israelites. I actually got a funny story about them. Okay, so I'm coming out of the store from downtown Oakland. I'm getting some snacks after a nice movie, Alien Covenant, right? And I see these two guys, these two black guys, obviously, reading the Bible, rather loudly, talking about like, the new age is gonna come and all that shit. And they mentioned slavery, and I asked them about slavery. They go on this tirade about how slavery is horrible and stuff like that, and how it's affected black people in America, but they can't wait until they can enslave white people. So I asked them, are they comfortable with slaves so long as it's not black people? And it's like they pretty much confirmed it. And they try to make some weird comparison to having employees and shit like that. And it's like, dude, that's nowhere near the same. So yeah, some of these guys have a similar mindset to G-Man when it comes to like the whole metaphorical, like literal slavery thing. And G-Man's on like he was really ridiculous with it back in the day with the whole saying his pets are slaves, basketball players are slaves. I don't even.
The fact that he doesn't, and again, I want to reemphasize that I'm really happy that G-Man's really trying to do better. So I don't want to make this too negative about G-Man, right? But we do seem to have consistency here that he doesn't understand things like analogy. He doesn't understand a lot of things in context and in English is in when we say that people are a slave to their job, it's just basically a expression, right? It's not meaning that you're an actual slave. There are differences between working for a paycheck or even debt slavery, where that's more of a conspiratorial thing that you're owned by the banks and the oligarchy. But he takes that as literal. That oh well, we're all slaves to something. Well, that's not the same thing. I mean, when you're talking about slavery, you're talking about taking the autonomy of a person away. You're talking about that person no longer having her rights. That person is no longer a human being in the eyes of the slave owner. That's not the same thing. I don't think that's ever okay.
Well, yeah, and then there's the thing where they talk about where him and Matt Dillahunty got on, or where he used the example of the prison system. That got real entertaining too.
And that's a horrible analogy as well, because you're not a slave in the prison system. They can't. They have an obligation, a stewardship to treat you with some kind of minimum level, right? Now, granted, you're treated like crap. It's prison, but
you lose your rights in prison.
You lose your rights, but they can't just flog you. They can't just, rape you. They can't just, it happens,
Well,
but I mean, it's punished, but they can't just kill you. When you're a slave, you are pure property. You have nothing. Absolutely nothing. They do whatever they want with you.
Well, I mean, it's not like it's mandated from the state that happens to you. Like, I sentence you to be butt raped for the next 5 years,
right.
And brutalized. Like, that's just a byproduct of the system. I mean, and that's not, and even then, it's not slavery. So what the fuck?
By the way, the link to get in, I put it in the live chat, but then I removed it. But go ahead and get it from the G Plus community. Holy Spackle, please come in.
It's always good to just check the G Plus if you don't see the link.
Yeah. But I mean, I like to get other people's opinion on, especially theist, because as a theist, I would think that the advocation or the somebody advocating for slavery doesn't do much to help convert people to Christianity. I'm sorry, I don't see how that works. Oh, so you guys believe that slavery is a good thing, according to G-Man. I think that I'm going to go to that religion.
They never mentioned that up front.
Yeah, they didn't tell me that when I converted, right? Now, granted, I'm not advocating that the Bible actually condones slavery as a whole. I don't know. I think there's an argument made either way. It definitely has laws. It definitely has rules. So, one sec. Either God condoned it or man condoned it, but I can't say which. Right? Man could be speaking for behalf of God, and he could be completely wrong. Because according to the Bible, that's happened. Right?
Depending on how you look at it, we're God's slaves.
One sec. The whole thing with the divorce laws. Even Jesus said, "Hey, you guys got it wrong." So maybe this was all just a misunderstanding by humans. I don't know. I'm not advocating either position. Not my thing. But what is true is, if you read the Bible, I don't see any way out of this. There is definitely rules given of how certain people, whether you be female, male, Hebrew, non-Hebrew, should be treated. I don't think there's any question of that, right?
No, there's no question in that, because even that, and that goes back to the whole with having a Hebrew slave, that if the master gives that Hebrew male slave, he gives them a wife, and that male slave wants to, on the 6th year, to be released.
7th year.
Oh, yes.
It's after the 6 years. Yeah.
Yeah, after the 6th year. In order to take, he can't keep his wife and his children. Those are still his master's property. He has to become that master's property forever in order to retain his wife and children.
Yeah, it's a loophole to keep them slaves forever. No question about that. But even still, the males Hebrews, the way I'm reading it, still had it better than the non-Hebrews.
Yeah, I don't know about that, Steve. I mean, the Midianites, I think they might disagree with you. Like,
yeah.
When they were brutally massacred and like the young,
they were genocide. There was genocide there. They wiped them out.
The young virgins were taken as as sex slaves and shit.
Well, and that's another thing that got brought up, and I don't want to go down too many tangents, but there was something just recently where somebody in the live chat, some theist, and I don't remember who it was, but they were advocating that wasn't rape. That taking child brides and taking women and children and the virgins and giving them 30 days to mourn, and after that, then they may marry them off. That's not rape. Well, what the hell else do you call it? I don't understand that.
No, Steve. No, Steve. I agree. That's not rape. I mean, that was just courting of the day.
That was the courtship rituals of the time.
After you massacre the family, you walk up to the girl and say, "Hey, baby, I just killed your tribe and everything. You want to be my sex slave, my new wife?"
I'll give you 30 days to think about it, though. Cultured.
I'll give you some time to get over the fact that I pretty much wiped out your entire tribe in a genocide, and you basically have no free will at this point.
Oh, thank you in the live chat. We're getting close to 100 people watching. Yeah, that was GPH. Thank you, Mr. GPT. That was GPH that was advocating for that. I might as well throw him under the bus. But yeah, he was actually advocating that. I'm like, well, I don't understand what you consider to be rape then. I'm sorry. If they killed my entire family or tribe or whatever, and then they said, hey, we're going to give you 30 days and then we're going to take you to be our husband and then rape you continually, I'm not going to be thrilled with that. Sorry.
But also, what would have been the consequences if these women would have said, I don't want to have sex with you, I don't want to be a part of it? They would have been killed.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not really an option.
You don't want my dick? Die.
or at least get the crap out of.
I mean, I know it's
Or
small, but
they would say, join your family that we just killed.
So let me ask you, MP. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but weren't you and Dragnaut and Emperor Atheist and I think G-Man going to sit down and have a conversation about some of this stuff just recently, or was that some other topic?
No. It was me, Drag, and Emperor. I don't think G-Man was going to be involved. The problem with G-Man is that, and this is my humble opinion. And this is probably going to shock some people. Personally, G-Man is actually pretty intelligent. He's an everyday occurrence, and he knows that, and he knows the fact that the Bible in some places is irrational, and he's just so desperate to try to make sense of it or try to justify that this material is some way not only moral but also have meaning for the day. And in doing so, I think he just takes these crazy positions because he has no choices. You have to like even last night we were talking with what's his name, Rand Campbell. G-Man does not believe the earth is flat, but I think he feels so boxed in by the theology that he has to in some places he has to be inconsistent. I believe the science when it comes to the earth being round, but then I believe the Bible when it comes to things like evolution, and that's just the way he's reconciled the two.
Well, I can't go on a limb and say that I think G-Man's intelligent, but I will say that I do agree that I think G-Man gets boxed in because of his theology. I think that when you take the Bible so literally that you have to make certain concessions to the point that you basically are advocating a position that I find heinous, right? I mean, I could never ever think that slavery would be a good thing, no matter what the Bible said. Even back when I was a theist, that was not a position I ever held to by any stretch of the imagination.
Well, look at last night, and I think last night was a prime example. G-Man was saying that the whole hangout was about, what's better for humanity, or what do we feel between science and the Bible? What's a better way of trying to kind of determine truth? So I, man, let's do this. Let's look at a prediction or therapy that the Bible says we should do for something like leprosy. And let's see what the Bible says about that. And let's say what science says about that. And then we'll determine which do we feel is, better for the way we live today. Which has a better choice, or which would you do? If you got leprosy, are you going to follow the Bible's instructions or are you going to go to a doctor? And,
right.
And he knew automatically that he would have to choose science over the Bible. So he just said, I'm not even going to talk about that issue. I choose not to. I don't want to talk about it. I'm going to bring up something else. And
that's a great point.
As soon as that happened, I understood he wasn't really, that hangout wasn't about determining which is better, which is better for the way we live now. It was just for him to try to prove some type of point. And when he was confronted with something that we could actually do right there in his face, he had to reject it because he knew that the Bible would fail.
And that's a great point,
if he got leprosy.
That's a very wonderful point. I think that is something that needs to be addressed. The time the Bible was written, thousands of years ago, a lot of the stuff just isn't applicable. And that's why I think anybody that holds to Bible inerrancy to the point where they think it is literal and not the Bible inerrancy that you have like, Kenny Rhodes would take it or General Han Solo. They take biblical inerrancy to mean that the message is inerrant, right? I think Jay does the same thing. Okay, that's a totally different thing. But when you're saying that every word written in the Bible must be taken literally, I think that this leads to a worldview that's untenable. Absolutely untenable.
Yes, I agree.
And morally bankrupt.
Right. But just to get back to the moral aspect of it, because this is about slavery and how to treat your fellow man, right?
But anything I say it is.
I'm just
kidding. Go ahead.
The god of the hangout.
Yeah, have you been at one of my hangouts before, Wolf? No, I love you, buddy. You got to drop around more often, man.
Yeah, I know. I'll be on Discord way too much. But anyway, so I put a link in the external chat about religious children are meaner than their secular counterparts, study finds. And it's really interesting. Let me just put it up.
Please.
On the screen.
That's an interesting. I'm going to have to read that because I was brought up in a religious household and I wasn't a mean kid at all. So,
Well, I just saw an article, and this is probably relating to this, that, this kid, this 12-year-old kid or 10-year-old kid was being bullied because he was an atheist. And I'm just like amazed by that. And I know these things happen. It's not that I'm amazed that these things happen. It's that I'm just amazed that there's still in this world, people get persecuted for any belief or non-belief, or whatever the hell you want to say, to a kid. I mean, that just boggles my mind that a kid was being treated poorly by people that are advocating Christianity. That's supposed to be a loving religion. Explain this to me, Wolf.
I mean, Christianity is not a loving religion. It's a this is just to be straight out honest. Christianity is a religion of coercion. If you don't do what we say, you will burn to death forever. That's really the dichotomy of the Christianity. Well, the Christianity that I've been exposed to, G-Man, Rand Campbell, these people.
Okay,
if you don't do what they say, you will go to hell and be burnt forever. That is extremely coercive. You don't have a choice.
Yeah, it's called argument or argument from the cudgel. Yeah, exactly. No, I agree with you there. And that, if you're just talking about what we see a lot of on YouTube and G+, especially with G-Man and that crowd, yeah, then you're absolutely right. Their motive is to convince you that they're right because of the consequences if you're wrong, kind of thing. And I don't think that's a good way to ever have an argument, ever.
Yeah, I think that being raised as a Christian, I think there's kind of a I sometimes see at least when I was growing up as a Christian, being raised in a church, that there was kind of a kind of like when people. This mindset that people get when they find out about like a new healthy trend, and they want to be able to tell people, hey, you shouldn't be, you should be doing this and not doing that. That was the pattern that I saw a lot growing up in the church. You shouldn't do these things because, God won't like that if you do those kind of things. There's that mindset too.
Right. Okay. So the study says, okay.
One sec, Wolf, if I may. Just FYI, I guess G-Man, instead of decided to come in here, because I didn't invite him, decided to start his own little hangout. Anybody can go watch what you want, but this is live too. You can watch him afterwards, either or. But he's saying Matt Dillahunty why he won't face the truth, and I don't want to get into that. I never want to speak for Matt. I have the utmost respect for Matt. He asked G-Man asked my opinion why he thought Matt Dillahunty won't debate him.
I'm pretty sure
that's all I wanted to go on that.
I'm pretty sure it has something to do with the fact that he doesn't get time zones very well.
Well, let's not forget the whole thing about him calling him in the middle of the night when he was sleeping.
And I brought that to his attention too. I said that was beyond the pale. That's probably the final straw. That's why I don't think Matt Dillahunty wants anything to do with you, and I don't think Matt's playing. I think he literally doesn't want anything to do with G-Man, and I don't blame him. But I wanted to get my opinion out there why I actually think that Matt is right, that he shouldn't debate him on this topic. This is not something that you should debate. I don't want to debate somebody who thinks that slavery is a good thing. I think that's absurd.
Yeah, because that goes back to what I was saying before, is that when people will try to get people into the Christian faith, they'll talk about how wonderful your life will be and how great things will be. And then when you start showing people about, oh, well, look at how in the Old Testament it condoned slavery, and it showed people being bought as property, and then they gloss over that. I mean, the entire time I was raised in the church, that is not a subject that they addressed. Even my dad.
Same, actually.
Well, it's one of those things where it's hard to rationalize away, and sometimes you have to either A, bite the bullet, or B, take the G-Man approach and take it so literally that you're just running down these arguments that to me seem absurd.
Yeah, and a lot of people use this economic argument that the slavery was basically like a social blanket.
Well, okay, then why can't you use the same argument? Oh, well, the slave trade back in the 1800s that all these people picking cotton added to our economy, therefore it was a good thing. That's what that one leader, white guy, I can't remember his name. That's what he advocates.
Yeah.
Donald Trump.
I can't remember. What's Donald Trump? The other one, MP. No, the guy that was just interviewed just recently by that journalist. It was a really good interview because the journalist actually just said at the end, he's like, "I'm just going to stop this. This is absurd," and he just walked away. I thought that was the greatest thing you could do.
Wow.
One thing I do want to agree with the gentleman, whoever just said that, growing up in a Christian home, you don't hear about the slavery. And I'll say this: my wife is a devout Christian, and we would never talk about religion, but One time we were watching the series called The Bible. You know, the History Channel did a series called The Bible, and they were actually going through like all the biblical text. And they had one segment they had the segment in which God ordered the Israelites to kill the Amalekites and even the children and the babies and everything.
Yep.
And she, from being, her father's a preacher, you know, he's a reverend, and she said, I have never heard that in the Bible. She said, I don't believe, you know, they made that up. That's not in the Bible. I literally had to pull it out and show her the text and say, no, this is in the Bible. Here it is right here. And from that day on, she's questioned it from now, because she said she if she would have known that was in there, she would have never believed that this thing could be true. And even the fact that I was telling her it was in there, she didn't believe it. She actually went to her father's house and looked at one of his Bibles to make sure that it was still in there, and it was still in there. She said she was shocked. She never heard about it.
By the way, it was Richard Spencer. Thank you, Average Joe 11. Yeah, Richard Spencer was the name I was thinking of.
Yeah.
What a racist piece of shit, let me tell you. But anyways, yeah, no, I think a lot of theists may not actually know a lot of stuff that's in their own Bible when it comes to that. Matter of fact, when G-Man had called the Atheist Experience, Matt had actually gotten the passages correctly. And then G-Man was asking him, well, where is that? You know, here, I think it's in passage 12. Well, let me read 12. No, it was not there. And then he kind of misquoted him. He tried to say that these rules only apply to non-Hebrews or slavery was just non-Hebrews, and that's not what Matt said. He said non-Hebrews or Christians were your neighbors. And it was just I don't even know where to go with this, because I'm so kind of pissed off that somebody's around there is out there advocating that slavery is a good thing.
Well, especially
the irony is it's a black man in the United States of America advocating slavery. This is crazy. This is insane.
I have no words, MP. I'm stunned that G-Man actually thinks that this is a good way to proselytize, that this is a good way to bring people to Christianity.
It's called being hypnotized, Steve.
Yeah, he's not the only one.
Sadly, you're right. He's not. But I mean,
mentality. Whatever is good for the cult must be good in nature.
I am quite sure that somebody has had to sit him down and one time and say, "Look at G-Man, you probably want to think this a little bit. You really want to like put it in a different perspective, because you're turning people away from atheism." As a matter of fact, it was not Jen Peoples. Matter of fact, he got her name wrong too. What's her name from the Atheist Experience? Tracy Harris. Even she had said, you're the poster boy for atheism. You're doing more to convert people to atheism than any atheist could do, because who wants to be associated with something that's advocating a position that slavery is good? Except for
the alt-right, the KKK. It's like he G-Man is the blackest alt-right person I've ever met.
But he's advocating against the Black Hebrew Israelites, and they're like, oh well, the white man's going to be our slave. He's against that, right? So I mean, he's not
against it. He's against it. Everybody, he's against slavery that's not racial. So as long as anybody can be a slave, but if you just want the white people to be a slave, he's against that. But if anybody else, if everybody's slaves equally, then yeah, he's for that.
Yep.
How does that work?
And he's been spreading that, and he's not the only one.
Is that like equal opportunity slavery?
Yeah,
it's affirmative action slavery.
Affirmative action slavery. That's the goddamn stupidest thing I think I've ever heard.
There is a person I've been chatting with. I will not drop his name, but he is very much for that. That what you're focused on is racial slavery, not the kind of slavery that's in the Bible, and that's getting to be really twisted.
Well, I don't know why it should matter what the limiting factor is. Whatever you want to call a slave, you will say, okay, we're going to make this group a slave. Doesn't matter whether it's their race, their eye color, their hair color, their height, whatever the parameter you want to give it. Why should that make a difference? Slavery is slavery.
Yes.
And I mean, whatever arbitrary parameter you put on it, to me, makes no freaking difference.
Yeah, and the thing is that what it boils down to isn't just what the Bible's doing isn't just that the Bible condones it, or these people back then said, oh, well, this is the system we set up. Their God gave them that law. That's how they justify that whole system of government, is their God did it.
Yeah, actually, I kind of question that anymore. By the way, Dave says stop preaching to the choir. I see what you did there, Dave. Stop preaching to the choir. G-Man will still never figure out what that means, preaching to the choir ministries. But no, I don't even know if half these laws could have come from a God, because they seem so morally bankrupt to me. And why would a God sit there and give 613 mitzvahs and Levitical laws that really make no sense? I mean, did God really care if somebody eats shellfish or mixes fabrics as
Oh,
compared
absolutely,
to...
man. That's horrible. Like, how could you condone that?
Well, that's
Well,
why I don't think
God is
Leviticus codes was ever implemented, really, but maybe
Steve,
they were just laws of man.
the
Steve, he
God of the
doesn't
Bible is a fucking micromanager, though. He micromanages your life like crazy.
Yeah, he doesn't like shrimp because he likes the smell of burning red meat. So that's why he said no shrimp.
Burnt offerings.
Yeah.
No, but is it possible? Let's put aside your anti-God positions. Is it possible that maybe if there was a God, that man himself just got the shit wrong and somehow misinterpreted what God wanted, and God just let him kind of run with it?
I wouldn't call that a
But
God.
whose fault is that?
God, but maybe. But again, it's hard to say whether that's some kind of divine plan. If it is, I don't understand it, but I'm just trying to throw out possibilities, right?
Well, why would an omnipotent being and an all-knowing being so vague that where he leaves it up to our interpretation of things?
Yeah, no, I haven't worked I haven't worked through that part yet. Actually,
Yeah.
I don't know. It seems a really difficult thing to overcome.
There's a paper that talks about an omnipotent being wouldn't need to actually have free creatures or the way we are now, because he already know all the everything that happens. So there would be no reason for us to play it out in this particular way. You know, like he knows who's going to be safe. He knows, like, why would you need to actually have us live in these moments to play it out? Except it's just some sick joke to him because he already knows the outcomes.
Well, I mean, I'd like to get a theist in here to kind of give the other side. I'd like to get a little balance. Tyler Durden says that G-Man actually does know what it means now. He says, he finally understood what preaching to the choir means, and he's perfectly fine with it because he actually wants to preach to the choir. Okay, well.
Okay, if I could just...
I thought preachers want to convert the non-believer. I thought that was the whole point of him having a ministry.
It's crazy, right? But anyway, this study, okay, they found that religious belief is a negative influence on children's altruism, right? Overall, quote, overall, our findings contradict the common sense and popular assumption that children from religious households are more altruistic, and said the authors of The Negative Association Between Religiousness and Children's Altruism Across the World, published this week in Current Biology. More generally, they call into question whether religion is vital for moral development, supporting the idea that secularization of moral discourse will not reduce human kindness. In fact, it will do just the opposite.
Now, is this one study or is this a series of studies?
This is a major study, like singular. They took almost 1,200 children aged 5 to 12 in the United States, Canada, China, Jordan, Turkey, and South Africa participated in the study. Almost 10 were Christian, 43 were Muslim, and 27.6 were not religious. The numbers of Jewish, Buddhist, Hindu, and agnostic were too small to be statistically valid. They were asked to choose stickers and told there were not enough to go around for all children in their school to see if they would share. They were also shown films of children pushing and bumping into one another to gauge their responses. Their findings robustly demonstrate that children from households identifying as either the two major religions, Christianity and Islam, were less altruistic than children from non-religious households.
I see. I'm kind of amazed by that. I really am. I mean, you think superficially that people that are raised religious should be a little more altruistic. I mean, isn't that the whole message Christ was kind of putting forth?
But it may not be because of the message, but of the consequences. Because even the message that Christ is putting forward, when you still have the whole children are still. When I was a child, they told me about hell. Like, if you didn't do this, you'd go to hell. And I think when you have that type of consequence attached to it, then it combats altruism, because you're not really doing it just because it's a good thing. You're doing it really to avoid a negative consequence.
Okay, fair enough. But putting aside that, let's assume that was not something Jesus was preaching. Let's say that, and I think there's an argument to be had there. But let's say Jesus was just preaching, hey, you know what? We need to be good with each other. We need to be altruistic. We need to be loving. We need to turn the other cheek. We need to, love the brother like you love yourself. I'm okay with those kind of messages, right? But I don't think you have to adhere to Christianity to have all that, granted. But I think that the New Testament puts forth a little bit lighter message than the Old Testament does.
Yes. Yeah, Jesus.
And I don't think you can separate them, by the way. I think they are. You can't extricate one from the other, because the New Testament and the Old Testament are related. Let's put it that way. I mean, you when G-Man, you can't just take the good with the and negate the bad. He has to take it all at once. And I think this is his way of dealing with that. I think this is his way of trying to cope with some of the crappy stuff that's in the Old Testament.
Yeah. Yeah, this is where they get into that argument, and even Matt Dillahunty did a video about that, about the Old Testament being abolished, and many people don't realize that in some cases, some Christians believe yes, the Old Testament is gone away, righteousness is found through Jesus Christ, but others say, well, no, the old law hasn't gone away; it's been fulfilled, and therefore Jesus is this ultimate sacrifice. So he's the ultimate blood sacrifice for atonement. But the old law still applies. So,
hey, I have a great idea. Since Doc Savage is in the live chat, and he was just over in the other hangout offering to buy G-Man and beat him occasionally, which G-Man didn't seem too thrilled of. I say, can we start a GoFundMe to buy G-Man? I mean, he has no problem being property. I mean, what do you think his?
I mean, I'll give you the money.
You know,
I'll chip in.
And I'm not advocating that we buy him to beat him. I don't ever advocate violence, but you know. He'd still be property. We could say we own G-Man.
What currency, though? What currency should we use?
Bitcoin. That thing's gone through the roof.
Ooh.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's not because he's black.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, that's the reason. Yeah, clearly.
I said it's not because he's black.
Oh, not because he's black. Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, that one word "not" changes the whole dynamic of that sentence.
Yeah, man. One of them's good. One of them's not.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't understand why he thinks it's okay to buy somebody. I mean, for God's sake, G-Man. It's not doing anything to help your argument to bring people to religion, I assure you.
No, that does not. That was one of those things that, like I said, being raised in a homeschooled and raised given Bible study every day. My dad actually taught my brother and me and the rest of our family members about what happened to the Midianites and the Amalekites. And he did not sugarcoat that. But the reason why that was justified is because their God said so.
Yeah. So if we did buy G-Man, Mr. Pluto the dog asked a couple of great questions. Who do we buy him from and how much is he worth? I'm going about $1.50, but I don't know who.
The American government. 4chan.
4chan owns him.
Yeah. Or we can find what church he goes to.
I don't think he's denominational.
Oh.
Yeah, I think
then his landlord.
Yeah, we could. Yeah, if we buy him, then maybe we can have. If he gives us because if he's going to be a slave, can he actually set his own price?
Sure.
Don't see why not. I guess.
Okay.
Somebody asked, well, why not beat him? Because that's condoned. I don't care if the Bible is condoned or not. I have morality. I don't think beating of another human being like that is acceptable by any means. I would never want to beat G-Man. That's just stupid.
I mean, at this point, the slavery of G-Man just sort of sounds like a bad BDSM ripoff.
Yeah, it sounds like a name of a movie title, huh? The Beating of G-Man.
Well, and the other thing is he never did really get past that. At least I don't think he did. About him being paid, being bought as a slave, but being compensated, doing work and actually being paid a wage. They never.
He brought that up in the video. He actually said when he called the Atheist Experience that when Matt had asked him, well, can I buy you? Can you be my slave? And he's like, well, if you pay me. And I'm like, I think you're missing the whole point of being a slave there, G-Man.
So wait, is this slavery or indentured servitude?
Well, it wouldn't be indentured servitude. That's called a job. Yeah, I mean, I was just blown away that was his retort. That he actually had said, "Well, yeah, I'll be your slave as long as you pay me." Well, shit, I'll do it. I do a lot of things for an income as well. Go ahead. You want me to mow your lawn? I'll mow your lawn. For a couple bucks an hour, like Tommy Hall. Sure, I'm actually pretty good at it, believe it or not.
Yeah, that's when you just set up the doghouse in the back and put some hay down and say, "There's your bed." But
I got a shed that I haven't been in years.
How does he relate that to
slavery,
though? I mean, when people are trying to relate slavery to being a servant, I think they miss the entire context of what the Bible is saying. These were not servants. These were not people that, okay, we're going to have you as a person that does things, and we're going to give you a modicum of wage for it and house you and all this other stuff, and you're free to leave at any time. These are your property. You're no different than a cow.
Yep.
It's like the difference between Alfred from like the Batman comics and like a modern woman in Saudi Arabia.
And the worst argument I've seen is when people say, "Oh, well, slavery was different back then." No, slavery is slavery. There is no, okay, slavery now is different than slavery back then. Slavery is the owning of another human being where you take away their autonomy and their individual rights.
You see what Risen said? They choose to be one.
They choose to be one. Have you read the Bible, Risen? That is absolutely bullshit. These were not people that chose to be slaves.
Yo, Steve,
now, male Hebrews could. Male Hebrew could actually go in and say, okay, I'll take a 6-year period to be a, quote, slave to work off their debt. And then after that 6th year and the 7th year, they could be enticed back to be a permanent slave if they want to give up their wife and kids that the master gave them. But for the non-Hebrews, yeah, you didn't have a choice in the matter.
I would like to point out to Risen that the only rights that slaves actually had is if you destroyed their eye. If you hit them and you destroyed their eye, then you had to set them free. And if a bull gored your slave, you had to pay 30 shekels to compensate for the slave, and the bull had to be stoned to death.
Right. I remember reading that as well.
How do you stone a bull to death?
You throw rocks at it. Yeah, same as
you just lock it in the Colosseum and throw rocks at it?
But I mean, for a theist to say that slavery was different back then is, I think, one of the dumbest apologetics I've ever heard.
Oh, Steve, it was different. See, today we have higher quality rags and better chains.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. We have real. You know what? Today's slaves, you can put in a little GPS tracking thing, right? So if they run, you can find them easier. That's the difference.
Ain't no black dude going down a river in a raft now.
Yeah, I mean, we could just GPS them all. So yeah, no, I think that's a really dumb apologetic to say that slavery was different back then. I mean, but this is the gymnastics I see that people have to go to when they take the Bible literally.
Hey, Steve, we're being picky. We're being very picky about this.
Picky because I have a moral conscience that I think the taking of another human being and making them property so they have no human rights and to do whatever you want with them, that's being picky. No, I think that's called having a conscience. That's being moral.
See, no human being has the right to make another human being no longer a human being.
Correct. I absolutely believe that. Yes, that is. Can you say that again? Because that needs to be reiterated.
Yeah. Well, I'm sick. I'll try. No human being has the right to take another human being's human being status.
Correct. I agree with that wholeheartedly, and I don't think that the Bible, just by quoting the Bible or saying, "Oh, that slavery was different back then," allows anybody to get away with that. Because that's what the same damn thing they said back in the 1800s. Oh, well, the Bible allows slavery, so let's
Oh wait,
have slavery. That was one of the apologetics they had back then.
Yep. Democrats actually used that to justify slavery.
Sure did.
You know what? I'm not surprised.
I think they were the Whig Party back then.
What do you want? What's up, McKnight?
No human being has the rights, but what about a god?
Hey,
well,
there's a difference between me being the bully with the magnifying glass and treating others like ants and God doing it.
Yeah, I mean, we're making an argument differently. And I think God's moral for doing certain things? No, if that's the case. But he has a lot more power than the average person. And again, I think a lot of people would probably would probably listen to God out of fear. They would probably relinquish their own autonomy out of fear for a divine being like that. But that's
I wouldn't do that. Like, you want to send me to hell for not listening to you?
Yeah, you say that, but I mean, again, I think that a lot of these people, if God did exist, he would put literally the fear of God into people. And I think that you can't say what you would do unless you're shitting yourself. And you're looking at.
I mean, if you can.
Well, look at this. Hang on one sec. Look at what was done in the atrocities in war because people were fearful. And so you're looking at something that is astronomically more powerful than any leader out there. So I think that people don't know what they would do unless they were in that situation. Now, I'm not saying that I wouldn't be fearful, right? And I'm not saying that I wouldn't follow the commandments of God out of fear. I think that you're justified to do that. But that doesn't mean you have to accept it. You can't choose your belief on that. If I think God's asking me to do something that is morally reprehensible, I'll still follow him out of fear, I think. But that doesn't mean that I would think that what he was doing is just.
I would
Why would he give us the opinion to do that? Why would he give us the ability to think for ourselves and to decide what's moral and immoral if he didn't want us to?
I mean, I couldn't go into heaven and not feel guilty knowing that people were suffering in hell.
But anyway, yeah. Just go back to the study real quick.
Sure.
I was actually gone a few minutes, but anyway. Okay, the study also found that religiosity affects children, punitive tendencies. Children from religious households frequently appear to be more judgmental of others' actions. It said Muslim children judge interpersonal harm as more mean than children from Christian families with non-religious children, the least judgmental. Muslim children demanded harsher punishment than those from Christian or non-religious households. At the same time, the report said that religious parents are more likely than others to consider their children to be more empathetic and more sensitive to the plight of others. The report pointed out that 5.8 billion humans, representing 84% of the worldwide population, identify as religious. Quote, while it is generally accepted that religion contours people's moral judgments and pro-social behavior, the relation between religion and morality is a contentious one, it said. And the report was a welcome anecdote to the presumption that religion is a prerequisite for morality, said Keith Porteous-Wood of the UK National Society.
Yeah, and I disagree with that. I disagree with that wholeheartedly. I do not think that religion is a prerequisite for morality by any stretch of imagination.
No, if anything, if anything, our morals came first, and then religion was built around that. But for some reason, over the millennia, people got it confused. Like, oh, look, our morals come from God, or they come from religion. No, honey, it's the other way around.
Yeah. Real quick, I don't know who some of the people entering the room is, and if I ejected somebody inappropriately, let me know. But if I don't know the name, I'm ejecting immediately. But if we do get sniped, it's okay. We can start another hangout. But I gotta I can't get porn bombed because I've got cameraman on. But we still can get sniped because of the way I'm doing the hangout right now. I'm not doing it through the business account. It's annoying, but it's fixable. You can always start a new hangout. But by the way, I just so we get this out there, we do know who it was that sniped, or somebody that porn bomb Neffy's hangout. It was the Immortal Army guy that hangs out with Sidney Wilson and that crowd, even though he's got enough beef with Sidney recently. But anyways, he has been removed from the GDC. He knows he's been removed. I don't want to go too much on it, but that is not acceptable behavior. I do not want anybody that does that in any of my hangouts. If you want them in your hangout, that's fine. I and Nicola and just about every moderator has recommended that he gets blocked from hangouts for this very reason. But if you want to take the chance,
recommended, which is taken as a command.
Recommended. But if you have a hangout, you want this guy in there and take the chance, that's completely on you. But yeah, I can't take that chance, nor will I think a lot of people, because
see, Steve, I talked to him, and he seems to only do that to like Neffy or people like that. He doesn't really do it to people.
That is not
okay. Okay, I'm just never mind.
Oh, Bomber Fox, he was on before. You're right, Bomber. I'm sorry. I just saw Bomber and I was thinking Porn Bomber. If you want to come in on a different account, let me know. Porn Bomber, I do know who you are.
I mean, that's some pretty low shit, joining somebody's stream and knowing the guidelines of YouTube and porn bombing them.
Yeah, I mean, I think there has to be a ubiquitous standard across the board, and I will not advocate for anything like that towards anybody else's hangouts, no matter whose they are. So why would I want that person in my hangouts, right? I'm the one that helped Neffy get back online. Why would I want to see his hangouts taken down now?
Yeah, for example, I think true empiricism is a jackass when it comes to science and other topics, but I wouldn't want to see his channel porn bombed.
No, not at all. And I've said that from day one, right? So yeah, I think that anybody does that is just, they don't have an argument at that point. They're just using just honest tactics to try to shut people down.
We need to have standards that separate us from these assholes.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't think G-Man or Neffy or even True would ever go in and porn bomb somebody. I just don't ever see them doing something like that. And yet somebody else would. You literally are lowering your standard less than they are.
Listen, I talked to him and I told him, you shouldn't do that because it gives them more reason to play the victim. He said, duly noted.
Yeah, absolutely. It really does, right? Because now Neffy's like, oh, look at these atheists trying to shut down my channel. It doesn't do anything to help the conversation.
Yeah, no, that's what I was trying to get out. But now that it's
And the
out,
hangout that he
no.
bombed was actually had my name in the title. And I'm like, Neffy, I'm not interested in having these conversations with you. I was asked to come in and ask you a question by G-Man. You wouldn't let me ask him a question. G-Man he was fine with it. Like, ask him a question, but obviously Neffy would not let anybody ask him questions. And I'm like, this is par for the course. This is why nobody goes into Neffy's hangouts.
Oh yeah. He I remember going in there and he made it clear that he wasn't going to answer questions. He doesn't want a conversation. He wants an inquisition, and that's just not actual discussion.
Correct. And then when he asks for very technical stuff, the best answer to give him is we'll give you that, but it'll take some time to get together. And then once we do give it to him, he never reads it. This is why I don't bother any longer. Jade spent quite a bit of time researching some papers for him. Sent all these papers to him. He didn't make it past the abstract. So we just have learned from our mistakes. We don't bother with Neff any longer.
That's how all these people are. Even flat earthers are just the same.
Yeah.
Can I just throw?
I've been honestly.
Go ahead, Wolf.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, I've been in his room a couple of times and I've discussed issues of biology with him. He really isn't that stuff, and honestly, whenever he gets obnoxious, it's just funny to like just mess with him, just troll him and shit, and just or just leave. I mean, it's really you're doing sort of a fool's errand trying to take him seriously. Like he's not worth that consideration.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to bullshit. I don't take any of them seriously. Let's be honest here. But they are out there, and they do need to be addressed every so often. And this is not bringing up something that was an old topic. This was not something that I said, oh, this is from like a year or two ago. Let's bring it up again. This was something that G-Man literally had asked me to check into. Right? So I did. I gave him the I hate the word to use the word respect, but kind of was. To go, okay, I don't know the whole story on this. I don't remember it. It's been some time. Let me go check this video out. And once I watched the video, my opinion was solidified that G-Man was absolutely wrong on this. That Matt was correct from his standpoint from the Bible. And I think morally, Matt is completely correct on this, is why he will not debate him. If I was Matt, I would not debate him on this topic either.
Yeah,
I mean, closest thing to the
not
debate,
worthy of a Matt Dillahunty debate.
Well, especially on this topic.
Any means.
But especially on this topic, right? How do you have a debate on someone defending slavery as a good thing? I wouldn't want to be a part of that.
Yeah.
What's next? Oh, let's debate whether rape is good.
Yeah.
Come on.
Exactly.
It's good for the rapist.
Okay, well, you could make an argument for that. Okay, granted. But do you want to let have a debate on the morality of rape being good or bad? No, I don't. There's certain things that I just think full stop are wrong. And I'm not interested in those types of debates.
I'm interested in is, did somebody get hurt, and was the pain worth it? And no, the pain isn't worth it.
By the way,
especially when you're a persona like Matt Dillahunty
here and address it. And by the way, G-Man can come in. I actually sent G-Man the link. He's asked me to. He said, if you have Hangouts, send me a link and I'll try to drop by. Okay, I'm cool with that as long as he's been acting better than he has been in the past. Then
I'm gonna ask him if I can buy him.
No. Now, what are you saying, Tony?
I'm 39 years old today. Woohoo!
Yeah, happy birthday! I wish you happy birthday on Facebook. I thought that was yesterday. It was last night. I guess. Yeah, it was last night. So I guess that is still today, right?
No, but I think Matt Dillahunty is he's a public. He's got a public persona, and he'd be lowering himself to talk to G-Man, and then lowering himself one more peg to talk about that topic.
Yeah, no, I think you make a good point on that. I don't think that. That it's worth having a debate with G-Man of that somebody at Matt's level. Matt is a professional debater. He's good at what he does.
He's a
master debater. But the main thing is that he gave G-Man a forum, and then G-Man exploited that, and especially by calling him in the middle of the night, as if, oh, hey, hey, buddy, let me call you up in the middle of the night to try to have a conversation with you. Yeah. That's just idiotic.
Yeah, I don't even call my best friends late night.
Well, I mean, people call me all the time.
How did he get his personal number?
He's had it, I guess. I don't know. Maybe he called. Maybe it was just on Skype. I don't. I think it was on Skype, but it doesn't matter. I mean, people can call me all hours. I've already said I'm up 24/7. If I'm not, then for example, like midnight, I'll get a message from him 5 hours later, and I'll be like, okay, hey, I'm at 4 o'clock in the morning. Don't expect too many replies. I'm probably out of it.
I'm always up.
Yeah. So I mean, people do message me at 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. That's generally the time I'm crashed out. But if I'm not, then I'll reply. But I don't care if somebody messages me at 4 o'clock in the morning or calls me at 4 o'clock in the morning. But I'm not Matt Dillahunty, right? I mean, who calls somebody at 4 o'clock when they're not on any kind of friendship terms? And I think G-Man actually thinks that. I think he actually thinks that him and Matt are yin and yang. You know, that he's providing a counterpoint for Matt, and I don't see it that way
At all.
Do you guys agree on that, or do you see where I'm coming from?
There's making a counterpoint, and there's being the antithesis of the argument.
Yeah, but he kind of puts himself on that level, right? He kind of says, "Oh, I've reached a type of level that he's woke. He's woke, but he thinks he's kind of reached the accomplishments that somebody like Matt Dillahunty has accomplished, and G-Man is nowhere near on that level.
Oh, he's the over 9,000 Christian.
But how many times has G-Man been invited to go to an event?
Ugh.
I don't think ever.
I would not want to meet him in person. He might start.
No, I'm not saying that. Well, I'm not saying that that's like the be all end all, right? I mean, but I do think it says something that if you're invited to an event, people want to hear what you have to say. I like the fact, like when Armored Skeptic went to go to an event, and him and Shuan had a nice little speech, and I liked the thing that Sargon of Akkad had. Right, he had a great discussion with that guy Thomas something or other, I believe his name it was. But they're invited to these things because they have something of value to say. Who would invite G-Man to an event as a public speaker to say something?
He's gonna stand up on stage, stroke his chin, and try and sound smart
and advocate that slavery is a good thing. Would you invite somebody? Would you seriously? No, I'm asking you guys. Would you invite somebody to your forum that's advocating that slavery can be a good thing?
I would pay for a therapy visit.
Yeah, I missed a Pluto the dog makes a great point. He says, "Do we blame drunken peasants for G-Man's swelled head?" Yes, we do. Again, I understand DP. You know, they have a show to do, and I get that, right? And I'm not faulting them for it at all. They're using G-Man as a lolscow, just like they do Brett Keane. I get that. I'm not faulting them for that, but it has gone to G-Man's head because he doesn't seem to understand that they're using them as a lolscow. He actually thinks that TJ has some kind of major respect for him. I don't think that he does. I would have to ask TJ that, but I don't think that he does.
Like he's a doormat, so that you step in, you laugh, you rub your feet off on the doormat, and then you get to the real jokes inside the room.
Yeah, but okay. Again, I'm going to give G-Man a little bit of credit right now. I think he is trying to than he was before. I think he's trying to get away from that lolscow thing. I mean, he's trying to arrange debates and he's trying to arrange conversations. I'm going to take that as a good thing. I'm not excusing his past behavior, but anytime I see positive behavior, I'm going to try to reinforcement. So I want G-Man to continue on this level, and I definitely want him to continue with the Black Hebrew Israelites. I think he does a masterful job against them. Even Wolf, do you think this is your area of expertise much more than mine, but do you think he does a pretty decent job exposing them? Wolf. Okay, we killed Wolf.
He's muted.
Okay, well, let's go.
Damn it! Okay. You killed Wolf.
Can somebody?
Well, how about the rest of you? Any of you guys listen to his man on the street stuff?
Yeah, I've listened to some of it. Where did these Hebrew Israelites spawn from? Does anyone know? I mean,
yeah, I don't know. I think what happened was there was this cultist-like movement to try to prop up I don't know how to even put it. I mean, they're not like they're actually from these tribes. They just made this thing with the 12 tribes are all African tribes, and that there's different degrees of being black, and they wanted to prop that up as some kind of racial superiority thing, and that the white man was inferior, and the white man was demonic, the white man was alien, whatever it was, to diminish another race, and no different than what I see the KKK doing, only in reverse. No different. But I think G-Man, well, yeah, same thing. But I think G-Man actually, wants to fight these people. I do not see G-Man as somebody who's racist by any stretch of imagination. I think he thinks racism is horrible, but at the same time he's advocating slavery, and I think that's kind of a huge disconnect there. How do you have such a dichotomous position where you, on one hand, think racism is bad, but you think slavery is fine? Again, I guess that, as long as it's not based on race, then it's not bad.
Yeah, but do you know how easy it's like, okay, slavery's fine. Do you know how easy it would be to go, okay, well, let's make white people slaves now that slavery's fine?
Well, that's what the Black Hebrew Israelites call for.
But like slavery is the first step to any number of races becoming, targeted.
Oh my God!
What?
God damn it, Risen! Fuck that kid.
What you do, Jay?
Oh, nothing.
He's arguing with Risen in the chat.
Oh my God, that kid! Jesus H mother. Sorry. Oh, knocked my head again.
You'll not swear in the name of Christ.
What is Risen saying? Poor Risen.
I asked him where it says that foreign slaves are given a choice to leave, and he said it's for economic choices.
What?
Wow. Do you think Risen's a Poe? I just can't believe that people actually say these things as apologetics.
I've been debating this idiot for. Sorry, Risen. Sorry, I retract that statement. Maybe he just has a language disconnect. Either way, it's been frustrating. Wow, it's been frustrating.
I just don't see these people's positions. I don't see how they're advocating for Christ when they're saying these things that, to me, again, I can't speak for Jesus if he actually existed, but I think Jesus would be coming down to these people and going, just stop talking for me. Just stop.
Yeah.
You're not helping matters here, guys. Because these guys are horrible role models for Christianity. I think God needs to reevaluate his PR group here, because the public relations sucks.
No wonder Jesus hasn't come back. That and everyone.
He probably doesn't want to. Jesus is probably going, hey man, I did it once. I ain't doing that again. One time's enough with me here. I'm not going back.
To be honest, I would not come back to Earth if I saw everyone was wearing the torture device that killed me just casually on their neck.
It seems kind of odd. Now, Lament Student says Risen's a troll. Again, it's so hard to tell if these people are trolls or Poes or they actually believe the argument that slavery is okay.
3 days I've been chatting with him. 3 days. More.
You think he's legit?
If he is a troll, he has got some stamina. Straight up stamina.
Well, I'll ask him straight out. Risen, honestly, if you really believe this stuff, why don't you ever come in and defend your position?
Yeah, join, pussy.
That's what I see. That's one of the eliminating factors, I think, for a Poe is that they don't come in and defend their positions. I don't think I've ever talked to Risen. Have you? Have you ever been in a hangout with him?
Have I?
Yeah.
No. I was watching the live stream of G-Man's, and he was talking about prayer, or he was critiquing a Matt Dillahunty video that Matt Dillahunty had done on prayer, and we got into a conversation about prayer, and so I invited him to a private hangout, just a chat hangout, because he sent me his email, and we just it's been going on since then. So it's been interesting.
So you do think he is actually a person that does believe these positions?
Like I said, if he is a troll, he has got some serious stamina, Steve.
Wow. Okay, let me ask you guys this real quick. A little side thing. We're down to like 4 or 5 people coming in and out. There has been some people that have suggested that I kind of keep these hangouts down to like 4 or 5 people because of the conversation goes a little more smoothly. What do you guys think about that? Obviously, I like having a full hangout, but obviously a lot of people rather just listen than participate, especially recently with the season. Having full hangouts has not really been across the board. Matter of fact, most people have only had like 3 people in their hangouts, but people love to listen, and I love that. But do you prefer these smaller type groups? Because I personally invite a group of people most hangouts.
It's easier to speak. Sorry.
Go ahead, Cyborg.
It's easier to speak, and I said that as I cut somebody off.
It still happens. It still happens, dude.
I'm
Yeah,
horrible about it.
Yeah, there's the delay. Everybody has a different bandwidth. People have different upload and download speeds, so there's always that to compete with. But
You know, Kelp Ocean does not give a shit. He cursed me out because I was accidentally cutting people off all the time.
Yeah, I usually tell after listening for a little while, people are having a little bit of delay or lag because I have experience with it, right? And I think that G plus each person in the Hangout has a little bit different delay. I've noted that, right? So I try to take that into account. Well, look who's good morning, General Han Solo. God, it's got to be like 6 a.m. your time. You're awake.
Yeah, I literally just woke up. It's 5 in the morning at the moment.
5 a.m. Okay, I'm close. Yeah. So can you help?
How you guys doing?
General, I am doing just outstanding. I'm working on my second cup of coffee, and I'm doing wonderful. So I'm quite wound up.
Yeah, you sound young and delicious.
I'm doing horrible.
I am so young and delicious. I am like tender white pork.
Can I try some of that pork?
Yeah. So General, can you kind of lead us on this from a theist point of view? Because you're one of my favorite theists, if not the favorite theist, quite up there. So can you explain in the Bible? I am love, I am light. Oh no, I am love, I am life. Yeah. So can you explain in the Bible slavery as opposed to bondage or indentured servitude or a debt that was paid off, and who was actually the slave and why that was condoned back then?
Oh boy,
you walked into it, buddy.
Slavery and bondage. Yeah. It depends on what people group are you asking, like Old Testament, New Testament, what people group in the Old Testament?
Let's go with the Old Testament. Like why were people treated as slaves? Why was it that there were specific rules for Hebrews that were male, specific rules for Hebrew females, specific rules for non-Hebrews, specific rules that hereditarily were born into slavery? Why were all these different rules existing?
Okay, yeah. Slavery actually was like a job. If you could not maintain a certain status, for example, I was recently watching a movie by it's called The Twilight Samurai. It was released in 2002. It's by an actor, one of my favorite Japanese actors, Hiroyuki Sanada. And the story is about him as a like a peasant samurai. His wage is only 50 koku. Like that's nothing.
You're saying that slavery was a job?
No, I'm saying where.
So when people said, "Oh, I need to get employment, I'm going to go be a slave," that's that.
Yeah, it's one of those last ditch effort sort of thing to maintain survivability. You didn't have a democratic society. You didn't have funds or charity or any of the sort.
Well, male Hebrews male Hebrews could do that. Male Hebrews, as I understand it, could actually become a slave. But what about all the other ones that have no say in this? They weren't people looking for employment. They were taken and made slaves.
Right. So if you're not, so that's when you compare the Old Testament stipulations in light of the other ancient Near Eastern cultures. The Israelites did borrow. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. The Israelites did borrow from the Akkadian sources and the Hittite laws and all that. But what's curious about, and you look at the way Israel, so we're talking non-Jewish people, that because of, say, a certain war, and hence the booty of war, if the person was taken in, obviously he can't be positioned in a higher power or a higher status. He immediately is drafted into slave work. But the Israelites treated them as a human, more so than any other culture. There's a certain type of freedom to a certain amount of work being a slave that no other culture provided. in that sense, it was better off than what the other cultures were providing.
Hey, Steve.
Yeah.
Tyler had a question in the chat.
Yeah, Tyler. Which one? The Leviticus or the
Yes.
Leviticus 25:44? Your male and female slaves are to come from nations from around you. From them you may buy slaves. That doesn't sound like a job.
Yeah, saying that position to be a slave. Israel didn't go about that was their duties to. Here we are as a people group who worship Yahweh, and slavery is our like mandate, and this is what we are. No, that was just part and parcel of that ancient Near Eastern culture, which God Himself abhorred. Actually, He didn't.
So God was for slavery or was against slavery? And I mean slavery, the owning of another human being where they have no rights.
Yes, He was against that.
He's against that. Okay. Now, you differ than G-Man, because G-Man actually says that God condones it. God actually advocates for it. Slavery is good, is G-Man's whole argument. That's why Matt Dillahunty won't argue with him or have a debate with him.
If that's the case, then there's no need for the new covenant in Jesus. it's that simple.
Okay, well, let me ask you. You agree that this should be a topic that is not a debatable topic, that whether slavery is good or not. Now, you could have discussion, about the Bible and what the rules were, and I get that. But do you think that Matt Dillahunty is correct in the fact that he will not debate this topic with G-Man, because debating whether slavery is morally good or bad is, to me, not a debatable topic? What about you? What do you think it is?
I guess a yes or no. Yes, in the sense that it's pointless. No, in the sense that it's pointless. Yes, in the sense that for the sake of discussion and knowledge sharing, but I don't think G-Man would ever do that anyway. Like, I don't think he would benefit.
Okay, I mean, I understand the whole knowledge sharing stuff, but I mean, would you debate somebody who's advocating that slavery is a good thing?
No, okay, I see.
Because if not, what's the next step?
If it was for the larger good, like if he's legitimately saying that, then that is so inhumane and so non-Christian like that I'm actually shocked that are you serious? G-Man's actually saying
yes, that's his position. Well, I mean,
so even today, like today, it's applicable.
Yeah, you just asked me about this last night. This was what we were talking about. As a matter of fact, I will send you the video because I don't think we were able to watch it in here because Wolf was going to play it, but he left. Of him calling in to the Atheist Experience and basically arguing with Matt Dillahunty that slavery is a good thing, that God condones it, and that the Bible, it's not like slavery nowadays. And then he kind of changed it to say, okay, well, as long as slavery isn't based upon race, then it's not slavery. And if RC says I'm strawmanning G-Man, if I am, then please correct me. This is how I'm reading his argument. I hate strawmanning people, so I do not want to strawman G-Man. But G-Man does, from what I've seen, his argument is that slavery is condoned by God, and that in certain circumstances, slavery is okay.
Yeah, the whole race thing actually is a relatively recent development. Like the Arab slave trade, a lot of Muslims they would take into account. They'd give a derogative term like the raisin head, meaning the Negro black man that they would derogatively use as manual labor. And that was in the early 800s, 900s AD. About the transatlantic, Pacific and Atlantic.
Yeah, well, but that's the funniest thing. G-Man is obviously, I shouldn't say obviously because it isn't with G-Man, but he is against the transatlantic slave trade. I mean, the Atlantic slave trade to him, or the transatlantic slave trade to him, was an abomination as far as I understand it, because here you have translocations of people from their homelands just to be slaves. I mean, there is nothing moral about that whatsoever. But I don't see how he can be against that, but at the same time condone the slavery that's in the Bible. There isn't much, if any, difference that I can see.
No, slavery is slavery, regardless of whatever you say. Like it's wrong. It shouldn't be done. I don't know what else to say on that.
So do you just? Oh, by the way, can Wayne join us too? Wayne, come on in. Are you basically saying you're biting the bullet on this, and that you accept that there is parts of the Bible that just have some pretty heinous shit?
So that.
I know.
Right,
I understand that. That's why I have more respect for you than I do ever for G-Man, because even though I may not agree with you on a lot of things, you're at least will say that the stuff's there. You're not going to sugarcoat it and say, "Oh, well, no, this doesn't exist because reasons." You know, you may try to, I think, rationalize a little bit. Don't get me wrong, but I think still epically more honest than the G-Man approach.
Yeah, ultimately, I want everyone to know that just at the surface level, you can read God saying, "Thus says the Lord," this, then that, like in the Old Testament. But when you actually see the evolution of the faiths take place throughout the Old Testament, suddenly God in Jeremiah is like, "Hey, now is the right time to sort of introduce this thing called the New Covenant," because he's taking into account social ethical evolution that through kingdoms, and you're talking about human history as we understand it in a secular way, and God is he's working alongside that, but at the same time waiting for the right opportunity to bring about, in this case, Jesus and salvation and all that.
Do you know
with a much better ethic.
Why he didn't do it sooner? I mean, do you know a reason why God did not say, "Look, owning of another human being is wrong under all circumstances"?
Well, I find, for example, Jordan Peterson actually touched on this as well as a psychologist, and I thought I was the only one thinking this, and then when I saw Jordan Peterson as a certified psychologist say the same thing, I was like, oh, okay. Basically, you have to take stock of the fact that these people at the time had a certain programming in their upbringing. This is completely normal to them. So it's not like today we can go and look at the stuff and go, oh man, that's really bad. This stuff was if God said otherwise, they would think he's weird. They would think he would be like, well, what's wrong with you? So, but God knows overall ontologically that this is not how humans should operate. And so therefore, there's an accommodation taking place. He's accommodating the free will thought process of these people. Quite, if you want to put it that way. And then finally, when Jesus comes on the scene, the Sermon on the Mount is practically that, where God finally gets to say, he's like, you read it this way, or you've been taught this way, but I tell you. And so that's the beginning of that complete reversal.
I don't know. It just sounds so apologetic to me, man.
And the thing is, I'm not even using the Bible. I'm just, anthropology, like anthropological studies. And
what do you have to add to this?
Yeah, hey guys. I was just gonna say, that's what people did in cultures back then. People had slaves, people had wars, people did bad stuff in the name of God. That's pretty much it. I mean, it's not really
a rationalization, though, is it? I mean, it sounds like a rationalization to me. Because look, I think we all agree there's some bad stuff that happened. But the question is, did God want this to happen? Did he allow it to happen? Did he promote it to happen? Did he condone slavery? I think those are the meta ethical questions we have to ask.
Well, I don't think God condoned it. I don't think God is like, oh yeah, take these people into slavery. But like what General said, they're looking at other cultures and they're building their own laws, and that's what people do. I mean, we can even look at it today with our systems of laws. I mean, we don't have slavery per se today. Legal slavery. We do have legal slavery of people working at Walmart.
That's not legal slavery. That's not even. Why would he even throw that word in there? That's like a G-Man thing. He doesn't understand metaphor or analogy. And
I'm joking.
For example, Steve, just quickly, look at the example of Abraham. So by the time Genesis 12 starts in the narrative, you already have Genesis 3, where the humans in the Persian Gulf area are dispersed. They're cast out of the garden. Then you have Genesis 6, where there's this peculiar intermingling human that bring about this flood that takes place. And then you have Genesis 11, which is Babel. So by the time Genesis 11 takes place, all humans are just doing their own thing in the worst, most insufficient means. Like basically, they are basically, who's that flat earther guy that was talking to G-Man last night?
Arcane Logos, Rand Campbell, and
they were all like Rand Campbell.
I got him.
I'm not I to put him into a bad light, but the stupidity that you see in that guy is exactly the same with all these people at the time.
Oh, I've always thought Rand was a Poe, and I mean, he's pretty convincing to me that he's not a Poe recently. I mean, I talked to Rand off air. I talked to him in messages, and we've always had a good rapport, believe it or not. Behind the scenes, I get along with Rand just fine. And you know, he's actually trying to convince me that he's not a Poe, and I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that maybe I was wrong, maybe that he isn't a Poe, and that he actually does believe this. I'm happy to admit that I'm wrong on that, if that's the case. It's hard to tell. It is really hard to tell with Rand, because he's such a convincing actor, because he is a showman. I mean, he is a character. There's no question about that. He puts on a character, even he'll admit that he has a character, but that doesn't mean that his character doesn't portray the things that he actually believes, right?
Right. Let me just show you. I don't know if my screen sharing, if you can see this. Believed, okay, outside of Yahweh worship. So we're talking non-Israelites. And let me just zoom in on this. So this is the canonical compositions from the ancient Near East. Can this be seen?
Yeah, I'm presenting you, but it's
okay.
You're gonna have to like probably zoom in more.
So I'll pick out my favorite quotes. All right, just look at this. I'll just pick out a few. So that if a sheep bites his right foot, will be constant against my land. That's one. And so you have to sacrifice a sheep based on that. Like now, if I scroll down, so there's stipulations on if Venus wears a white tiara, it means Jupiter stands in front of her. Now look at this. It's a really funny one here. If a man ejaculates in his dream and is spattered with the semen, that man will find riches. He will have financial gain.
The Bible reads like a porn mag. I swear to really.
If a man has anal sex with a man of equal status, that man will be foremost among his brothers and colleagues.
What chapter are we reading from now? So later on, I can look this stuff up.
Well, no, this is not even the.
These are ancient Near Eastern stipulations. Like these
are in the Bible, is it though?
I thought we were in the Bible. I was like, this is gold right here.
What scripture is that? Because this isn't the Bible. I don't remember seeing that in the Bible.
This is an Akkadian.
Oh, an Akkadian text. Okay, because I was like, I believe it or not, I have actually read the New Testament. I read most of the Old Testament. I didn't. But I didn't remember anything like that in there.
Steve, look at this. If a man dreams he kisses his penis, what he says will find acceptance. Whatever he desires will not be withheld from him. So
what does this have to do?
It's this insanity, right? That they believe. They literally believe this stuff, and you can well imagine God, in this case, obviously Jesus, knowing what people are like in Abraham's time. So when God approaches Abraham, sorry.
Well, I bet they had some crazy thoughts. Even Wayne was saying that earlier.
Yeah. So now think about it. Thought patterns. What's the psychological ramifications of this? Like, how would they behave in culture? Ultimately, how would human beings as a species survive? You won't have human beings laws like you're seeing over here. You need advanced high-tech culture, and you need, in this case, an introduction of the scientific method for us as a species to maintain our survival. And I argue the only way for that to happen is the way it happened, which is the way God orchestrated history, and then with Jesus and the church, and
it's all part of the grand plan.
On and goes.
Yeah, but like, there's so much here, right? Well, I mean, first of all,
Scott is having an aneurysm at this point.
Yeah, like first, I mean, God condones slavery in the Old Testament. I mean, it's super clear. You're right to Leviticus verses 25.
But I wouldn't say that, though. Just because it's written in the text, it doesn't mean God condoned it. You can say this is what these people probably believed about God or whatever, but I wouldn't say God himself condoned it. A lot of people write a lot of crazy things in these ancient books, and they'll say, oh, this is what God believes. No, it's what you believed about God.
Sure. If your argument is that God didn't give Moses the Levitical laws, that's fine. Like, if that's your argument, then fair enough. Yeah, then he didn't, that these are just the beliefs of whatever was going on back then. Right. But if we believe that God gave these people Levitical laws, and specifically the stuff about how to treat your slaves and the kind of people you can have as slaves and things like that, then you have to argue God condoned it at that point.
That's what I think.
We can't have it both ways. So it's either God didn't give those laws or he did give those laws. And then if then we're just picking and choosing then we're saying, well, okay, well, the stuff that seems to make sense today, this stuff's much more rational. So, I'll say that slavery is wrong because, I don't think God would allow us to.
No, we're not picking and choosing. The entire, like, if you go to Paul's argument in the New Testament, in 2 Corinthians 3, he calls the entire Old Testament law, except for the Ten Commandments. The Ten Commandments is special and unique. He says, if the ministry of death that was inscribed in letters of stone came with a certain type of glory, Spirit's ministry have speaking about the ministry of Jesus. He calls it the ministry of life. So there's a distinction, like he says, we are ministers of a new covenant, which is not written but spiritual, because the written text brings death, but the Spirit gives life.
The Old Testament, it doesn't change what God used to do. Like even if I buy that, like, okay, well, there's a New Testament, great. Doesn't take away from the Old Testament when God condoned slavery and things in the Old Testament. And you said something interesting earlier. He
doesn't condone it. He accommodates it.
Well, no.
He could either condone it or he's complicit in it.
Listen, the word condone, we can, if we want to get the definition of what condone means, it means that basically means to allow. Like, I mean, unless we're defining condone in some strange way that isn't usual, like how we would use the word condone, it's to allow. Basically, not only does he allow it, he gives you.
Because you're complicit in something doesn't necessarily mean you condone something, I don't think.
Well, I mean, he straight up tells you who you can own, the kind of people you can own.
Condone by being complicit, maybe.
Well, I mean, if God tells you who you can own, what you can do with them, how you can treat them, like I don't understand how we wouldn't say that's condoning slavery. At that point.
It's assuming that because I think when Americans think of it, they think Christians believe that God came down and he literally told these priesthood people, this is what you can do, this is what you can't do, and then they wrote it down. No, they most likely came together, they had a little small congregation, and they're looking at these other texts and they're trying to come up with their own law. They're trying to find out how can we best suit society, and et cetera, et cetera. So that's pretty much how it went down.
I respect your position more. I'll be honest with you. I respect that position more than, but that isn't a typical Christian position. It's not. Like the typical, this is that God's word is God's word, and this is exactly what He wanted it, and things like that.
Yeah, but that's dumb.
Listen, I agree with you. I'm on your side with that, and I appreciate the nuance that you have, Wayne. I really do. But there was something General had said earlier that I didn't get a chance to respond to. And that was that he was talking about how these people would view it as weird almost, not for them to have slavery, right? I don't know why people wouldn't find it weird that God asked you to cut the tip of your dick off at basically some point, right? There's the things where God draws the line where he's like, okay, no pork, no mixed fabric, no men with crushed testicles can offer things. Like, I mean, we have all these different things, but slavery, no, that's cool. Go with your culture, guys. Own people as property. Treat them with rigor if they're a non-Hebrew. Keep them for life. Own children as property. Like, there's got to be. Like, I don't know, man.
Yeah, the whole circumcision thing is basically an identity thing. So do you know what because when the Israelites are coming out of Egypt, the Egyptians practice circumcision.
Sure.
But did you know what circumcision the Egyptians practiced?
No, but even if it's the point that we need to for identification, isn't there a better way that doesn't involve me cutting off the tip of my dick?
Again,
like God's plan. I need to make you identifiable. Hi, Phoenix. Hi. I need to make you guys identifiable and separate it from everybody else. So what I'll do is have you cut the tip of your dick off.
Skylar, let me just put it this way. God would have to literally reprogram the entire culture's thinking mentally, like literally put them all to sleep, rewire their brains to think like a 21st century person.
No, absolutely not. You could start this way earlier. You're talking about now the plan's all messed up. Like he could have easily created the plan where they didn't have to do all this. Like you act as if like God's purpose and plan, this wasn't all planned out already. Like he knew what was going to happen. He had a specific plan for mankind as far as that was going. And like now it's all of a sudden we make God impotent until until later on where it's like, well, he couldn't have done it this way. It's like, sure he could have. He could have done it any way he wanted, as long as it is logically possible.
But then if God did it the way you and I would like him to do it, then that doesn't accommodate the free will of humans and the evolution of the social ethic that we understand in human history.
I think you could still have free will without having to cut off your fucking tip of your dick. I don't see how.
No, that's a requirement. You got to be.
Yeah, like when you're talking about free will, like
you want me to tell you how
to be able to make choices. If you're the most basic definition of free will, the ability to make choices, you still don't need all these extras, right? And let me just give you a quick example that I've used before. All right, you would argue I have free will, yet I don't have the ability for my body to fight every disease on its own. It just doesn't exist. Does it mean that I don't have free will? Of course not. There's just certain things that I have limitations on. It doesn't mean that you don't have free choice. Go ahead.
Okay, the Egyptians practiced half circumcision, where the foreskin would be hanging. The Israelites obviously practiced full circumcision. So in Joshua 5, curiously, you had this second circumcision that needed to be done. Circumcise, the penis. Now, why did they do that? Because women, again, this is their belief, if a woman saw a so-called, supposedly Israelite to marry or something, the mark would tell her from what tribe and what culture that person's from. So if the foreskin was hanging, she would instantly know, yeah, that's an Egyptian. And so to know, and don't forget, these people are not kind of like today where you can just, go at a party and hook up with someone and, possibly lose your virginity. That thing was a very serious thing in those cultures. So who I lose my virginity to, and obviously in this case, produce offspring in light of my family line and all that, is a significant thing in their culture. So that's the reason why this marking was there, to emphasize that the Israelites are distinct because, in this case, the men of the Israelite clan are completely circumcised.
I mean, it's the same thing you said before. So God just is separating their culture, basically. Yeah, the reason.
Skylar, at the end of the day, who's thinking of these things? Is it God saying for you to do the circumcision, or is it humans who?
It depends on how you interpret the Bible. Because, like I said, Wayne over here has a more liberal position, which I respect. I don't know what your position is on this. So, or you can take the position that the scripture is 100% true. So it depends on who I'm talking to and what.
1 second, Skylar. Let me ask my question. Let's pretend we're looking at this as pure secular anthropologists, where we look back in history, and we see the Egyptians, do these practices and so on.
Sure.
How would we explain these practices apart from God?
Oh, sure. Well, I mean, okay.
What would be the most natural thing to do as an anthropologist?
I don't know if that's my point, though. I think that's why it is the way it is. I mean, obviously, it's just cultural things, but the difference is that the Bible tells you it's from God, most of this stuff.
No, it doesn't.
At least the stuff when it comes to, so the slavery stuff doesn't come from God? Where he talks about who you can own? The stuff with cutting off the tip of your dick doesn't come from God.
But that's my point.
Women being property doesn't come from God, even though. So it's all on how you interpret
the only thing
you're a literalist
from God. The only thing that came from God, literally the hand of God Himself, was the Ten Commandments. Nothing.
Your interpretation of Scripture. That's how you believe things came from God. You, and it sounds like Wayne and you don't have a similar position than most Christians do, and that's fine. If you guys want to interpret the Scripture differently, you guys aren't literalists.
Moses inscribed in stone 600 plus laws.
No. It says in the beginning, I believe, of Leviticus and Deuteronomy, it says these laws were given by the Lord your God to Abraham or Moses, and then it lists all the laws, if I'm correct.
No, those weren't inscribed on stone, those laws.
Well, hold on. I believe in the book of Leviticus, in the very first chapter, I think the first thing it says is, the Lord God called to Moses and spoke to him from the meeting. He said, speak to the Israelites and say to them. And then it goes all into all the different Levitical laws.
Yeah.
Unless we're just going to say that the Bible isn't meaning what it means there when God said He spoke to Moses.
That's why I have this list over here that you can see. You have an entire list of everything He goes through under murder, manslaughter, unsolved murder, eye for an eye, kidnapping, fugitive slaves, divorce, sorcery, stealing, loss, and all that you see in Deuteronomy. In line and borrowed from Hittite laws. God didn't originate this stuff. It was already there. It is literally borrowed into.
I'm not saying, okay, so then you don't agree with most modern day Christians then. You don't believe that the Bible.
I don't agree with fundamentalist Christians.
Sure. Well, that's fine then. I don't really have an argument with you then. If you don't believe, and that's all I'm making a point of. If you were to argue,
and the Bible doesn't agree with fundamentalist Christians.
Well, I mean, the Bible says that God gave them these laws. Now, if that's not true, then it's just another contradiction within this Bible.
Let me give you an example of what it means that God gave them this law. Like, I'll give you one specific example. So, we would both disagree with this particular law in Deuteronomy 25. I'll read you, from the Bible itself. It says, if two men are fighting together, and the wife of one comes to rescue her husband from the grasp of his assailant, and she reaches out and seizes his genitals, cut off her hand. So this is in the Bible, okay?
Yeah, now, where the Bible says God gave them these laws, yeah.
No, this is Deuteronomy is Moses repeating. In this case, it's a sermon he's giving to the next generation of Israelites, what was already known in the first generation of Israelites. So this doesn't say.
Which chapter and verse are you reading right now?
Chapter 25 of Deuteronomy in verse 11.
Chapter 25, and what verse is 11?
Now, when you look at the parallel to that, the Middle Assyrian law, which predates this Mosaic law. So let me just open it.
Sorry, my daughter's in the background.
Let me zoom in. So here's the same exact law that predates Moses. If a woman should crush a man's testicle during a quarrel, they shall cut off one of her fingers, and even if the physician should bandage it, becomes infected, and the dots here means is the cuneiform text is corrupted, meaning the stone has faded away. So what scholars try and do is they try and fill in the gaps as to what possibly the word could have appeared. And it says, so if she should crush the second testicle during the quarrel, they shall gouge out both her, and it's possible that it could be eyes or breasts. Now notice, Deuteronomy law is copying law. Has been lessened, and I'm not defending this, by the way, I'm just saying it's interesting that the law has been watered down in Deuteronomy, but in the original version of where it appears, not only are her hands meant to be cut off, but also her eyes and her breasts. So here's an example where you have this evolution of, obviously, to us, it's horrible. Why do they even believe it? But there's a watering down of it to bring about an ultimate good, and then a complete removal of this law when Jesus comes on the scene.
Listen, I get it. It's this culture is back then. Like, I get it. But the problem is the beginning of these chapters begin with God spoke these laws.
Right.
So like you either can't say the Bible. So the Bible's incorrect then at that point. The Bible where God says he spoke these laws, gave these laws, that's incorrect. And then if we're going to say that, then we're really just picking and choosing what we want to follow and what we decide's good and what God actually said at that point.
Yeah, but I would argue that it's not ontologically related to his character. Like I would argue that the laws he actually mandates as being quote unquote olam, eternal, would be the Ten Commandments. And in the Ten Commandments, I think you'd all agree with, because they're universal commandments.
Well, I don't agree with necessarily all the Ten Commandments, but I guess
they're not as bad as this.
Well, no, but I mean, saying they're not as bad. The Bible straight up says that God gave these laws to the Israelites, and you guys want to get out of it. Like, oh no, these laws God didn't give, just the laws of the Ten Commandments.
Skylar, let me put it this way. Just as I showed you an example of a borrowing of this law, guess what? The Ten Commandments is unique in the ancient Near East. You won't find an equivalent in the ancient. If you're arguing for God to like step in to human history and totally change things, oh yeah, the Ten Commandments is an example of that.
Didn't the laws of Hammurabi, have similar laws to the Ten Commandments?
Not really, no. I've
Not
seen
really,
that.
or
No, because Hammurabi comes later. I take the 14th century or the 15th century Exodus dating. So
let's see here. Let's see if we can find the laws of Hammurabi and see how similar they are to it.
So, John,
it's been a long.
How do you differentiate between what God has given as laws and what man has interpreted incorrectly? How do you know? Because the Bible puts forth all these things as commandments from God. That's why people like G-Man and others take it literally. No matter what is in there, they think everything is a commandment from God.
Yeah. No, that's a fair point. It's unfortunate.
So looking at the laws too,
I hate to say this, but it's unfortunate. It's kind of like
there's a problem there, right? I mean, you can see it's very hard for.
I know. It's
and that's why. Well, let me ask you this. That's why when I say I have my own moral point of view, when I say slavery is immoral, no matter what, that's my personal opinion, right? I admit that, but how does the average person going to look at the Bible and go, well, you know what? Yeah, it does say right here that slavery is condoned, blah blah blah. And as Scott points out, these were things that were supposedly given by commandment by God. That's why G-Man has to take that position, because he takes things extremely literally. I don't take the Bible literally, right? So I don't have to take that position.
No,
I can say that.
Okay, so I'll give you an example from our evolution discussions. How many times have we said things, obviously because we're grounded in the language, right? In the context of the discussion of evolution and say common descent. And then you have complete mischaracterizations for a G-Man, like we turn into a banana or something. Like they do you understand that they may understand the wording and the language and the words and the names that we would use in taxonomy and so on, but they don't actually have a proper education, or what's another word for education? Like an informed perspective. They just read at face value.
Okay, so you're saying that in order to actually be a follower of this religion, you've got to have an in-depth understanding of the Bible.
That's what I've been sharing with my screen. I've been showing you the context between, oh look, text, and hence this is why Deuteronomy quotes from it.
Right, but you do a lot of research, and I expect your scholarly work. I don't necessarily agree with you, but I know you try to do research on this much more than just a superficial, perfunctory type thing that G-Man would do. I get that, but the average person that believes these things, the average Christian, does not go into the religion and say, okay, I want to have this in-depth understanding of this. And the average person looking at it,
and that's why Jesus is the key, because if a person cannot resources for this sort of thing, just go and read what he says, how he lives his life, what he taught. That is literally the Christian message.
I mean, I always said, I mean, I don't have a problem with a lot of Jesus' teachings.
You don't have to worry of what the Old Testament is saying. because you literally need to like program your mind and educate yourself into an ancient Israelite and ancient Near Eastern, thing to even understand what's going on there.
So you're saying you have to look at it from their point of view.
No, let's be fair here.
I don't think
because both General and Wayne have different viewpoints, and I would say the majority of Christians.
Granted, yes,
by far, right?
Yeah, actually, Wayne and I are
far more
intellectual agreement. Argument that it's like about education and things like that. Like, I'll give you like people like G-Man, sure, yeah, those guys don't know shit about the Bible, all right. But like people like James White, apologists, professionals that like argue the Bible constantly, that are very well versed in it. They believe that this stuff is literal.
Not really.
You're going to tell me James White doesn't believe that the stuff is literal?
No, I'm saying James White is looking at this through a particular lens, and that is a reformed, Calvinistic lens. And
so give me
even though I appreciate his scholarship and New Testament criticism, as far as the ancient Near Eastern stuff comes along, yeah, he's just like any average Joe, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, James White is a New Testament scholar, so.
Well, and let's bring up something else. So let's bring up another point, right? Even like to get past this, the whole issue with the reason all these cultures are running amok is because of God, because he just decided to abandon it all.
Not really.
He didn't. He didn't just basically leave everybody out after freaking the fall of Adam and Eve. I mean, he just decided to communicate with certain people throughout history. Moses, Abraham.
Actually, God was the one constantly warning, like, you want Cain, sin is creeping at your door, don't do that.
So who'd you say? Cain, and Abel? Who'd you say?
Saying God is the one that's actually the good guy. Like, he's the one actually giving logical...
To who? The only people he talks to, that at least in the Bible, it seems to be Abraham, Moses, Lot.
No, there are other people there. There are
not the other cultures, apparently. Apparently, the only people he wanted to be bothered with was the Israelites. Who else did he communicate with?
Majority of humans were isolated or packed up in the Persian Gulf Oasis in that period, like 50,000 years ago.
And do any of those other cultures have a history of anything with God in the same way? Because the only where we get this reference to Jehovah is through the Old Testament, Judaism, and Christianity now.
Yeah. Yeah,
I'm trying to understand, how did things get so mucked up back then? So why wasn't God involved? Because he was involved with Adam and Eve. He was involved in Abraham. He was involved in Moses. All these other people, nope. Nothing. It's like they don't even know who he is. They're all
that's an argument from silence. You don't know.
Well, what's the evidence for it?
The evidence is through anthropology, the anthropological studies, the human migration patterns, all that sort of thing.
How does human migration patterns show you that God was in communication with other cultures?
Because then you can read what other cultures are writing, which is what I just showed you.
What did you know? You were showing me different. Your argument was showing me that stuff to see that it wasn't actually God's law.
No, I'm showing that humans were just the same. So a large population group that is in the Persian Gulf area where Eden is. I'm not denying that there's very small pockets of humans that would have, by 40,000 years ago, you have the Aborigines in Australia, so that they're far removed from what's happening in the Middle East. But when you look at Aborigine art, the memory of the tribes, they still believe it's no different to the type of laws that you see in the Akkadian laws I was reading from.
But
meaning there's a primitive, meaning that there's a collective memory, a primitive memory of the most basics of just things that we know today is completely wrong. And that's just because of humans. Humans have brought this up, not God.
Listen, if you're just talking about like when you're basically referring to the Ten Commandments, don't kill, don't steal. Yeah, there's a reason probably through evolution why these things...
No, I'm talking about kissing a penis and you get welts.
But then I don't understand your point then, because your point was to say that these weren't from God and they just came up culturally, basically. Now you're going back to them.
Yes.
So how is that an argument to show me that God was in communication with those other cultures? By pointing out stuff that came up through cultural morality and relative morals back then?
The thing is, I don't know. God may have been in communication with the Aborigines. He may not have been in communication with the Aborigines.
That was my point. My point is that it seems like God just gave up. Was like, listen, hey, you know, I'm gonna work with Adam and Eve for a little bit.
Not really.
You can say that, but the only people he seems to interact with, once again, because Adam and Eve, Moses, Lot.
G-Man.
It seems to me that it seems to me he's in communication with these group of people, so he can pave the way, so he can communicate with all of mankind.
Yeah, the epicenter was literally the concentration of humans was in this specific region. So Genesis 3, you have the fall take place. Oh, but by the way, there's actually 2 more falls that happen. So Genesis 6, there's another fall. Genesis 11, there's another fall. And then finally, when Genesis 12 starts, Abraham, who's not even a Yahweh worshiper, and no human is a Yahweh worshiper by that time. Everyone is doing what Judges says, good in their own eyes, complete relativism, just complete despair.
I don't recall Abraham.
God is the one wanting to constantly
worshiper from the beginning of the chapter. I thought that it begins with him talking about Abraham was chosen.
Yeah, he was chosen.
He was already having conversations with God from the very beginning of the chapter.
Right, because God instigated a communication. Joshua 25 is context to that, because
so God instigated that conversation, right? But he didn't instigate the conversation with everybody else, because God could solve this communication problem pretty easily. Be very simple for an all-powerful God to solve a communication problem, but he tended to choose people.
After you have the natural disaster called the flood, with Noah brings
how long
about
was that, though, we're talking about? Thousands of years, because the earth had to repopulate at that point.
I said local flood.
The local. Oh, so you believe in a local flood? All right. So there were
a local flood in the same
survive.
Persian Gulf area. So you have Noah, and then the table of nations springing out of that. And by the way, I don't believe Noah was the only survivor. I believe large populations of humans survived the flood. And then you have
God wasn't trying to flood the world; he was just trying to kill some individuals. Basically,
no, it was a natural disaster that happened. Steve has seen my presentation. It was a natural, it's kind of like the 2011 tsunami in Japan.
So when God says that, so I guess you don't believe the actual Bible text, and when God gives his reasons for flooding the world, then at that point,
I would argue that it was in his direction.
But you see what you have to do with all this. Like every time you've got to be like, I don't believe this part of the Bible, basically. Like whether it was slavery, whether it was the flood, like you just got to basically pick and choose which text.
You're wanting me to read it like G-Man, like literally.
No, I'm fine. Listen, I respect you for not believing. I'm not, and please, General, don't get me wrong. Like I actually respect your openness with the religion here. Don't get me wrong. I'm not knocking you for that. Okay. But what I'm saying is you have to at some point just admit that you're picking and choosing what you choose to believe and what you believe what scripture is from God and what scripture isn't. That's all I'm saying.
Skylar, is it a fact that the Persian Gulf was flooded?
I don't know.
Well, it's according to secular peer review papers in the scientific journals, it's a fact. It literally happened. That place got flooded.
Steve, can you back this up?
I've seen papers and there's evidence that there was some flooding there.
All right.
For argument's sake, let's go.
I'll grant it for sake of argument. Okay.
Okay. So the fact that that's a fact, naturally speaking, now you have on top of that this, in this case, a religious text, which I hate the word religious, but document about Israel's history, connecting back to, in this case, Noah as a non-Jew, Abraham, and his story of this experience and the theological stuff and reasons that go behind this natural phenomenon. That's all it is doing. I don't understand why you should have a problem with it when it's an actual fact of history.
No, the problem is the Bible explains it differently than what you're explaining it. So, the Bible says one thing and you say another.
Yeah,
which is fine.
And General, could it be that? Look, I'm okay with the local flood scenario. I obviously I think that the area was flooded, but is it not more likely that the people didn't understand what was going on, so they invented this grandiose story to try to account for it and say, "Look, we don't know how any of this stuff works, but you know what?
I was thinking the same thing.
we're dying.
Well,
destroying our crops.
You know what, Steve?
Wait, let me finish. We're going to attribute this to a divine being because anything that occurs has to be from some kind of God, whether it be lightning or tornadoes or any kind of natural catastrophe that they don't understand. They're going to attribute it to God. And that narrative then went on to become this global flood that the young earth creationists kind of have taken and run with. I mean, is that something that is at least likely? And that may not have anything to do with the God, right? You don't need a God to have that scenario happen, do you?
No, and guess what, Steve? I sympathize with that so much because if I was to isolate the story and just read it like how he just, I would actually argue that that would be the case. That, hey,
then why do
these humans being very superstitious.
Well, I don't mean it's judgmental or derogatory, but why do you need a positive God then if a natural explanation explains all this?
No. So I'm just saying, if I isolate what you're saying and I isolate the story in that context, I would completely agree with you that even when the text says that the Spirit of God moved over the waters to rush the waters away, to evaporate them, I would definitely know that that's some form of superstitious idea that, hey, guys, it's actually just the wind, the wind patterns, and it's just natural physics. That's what's happening. You can't attribute that to God.
Well, you can say that now, but 2,000 years ago, they sure wouldn't have.
Exactly. So now, but here's where I'm going with this. When I take the entire narrative, the whole book of Genesis, so from the very first chapter all the way through to Joseph's, Egypt, continual narrative of this divine hiddenness that accommodates human experience, human free will, and so on, with an actual fact of history that we understand in secular anthropological research. And to me, if there is indeed a God, I think he would behave in such a way. He's divine, he's hidden, and at the same time working with the story as the story evolves.
So what benefit would it be to God to have people misinterpret the actual event so demonstrably wrong? I mean, because I think everybody here obviously agrees. And there's not a person in my audience probably right now that does not accept, the old Earth reality, right? Nobody that I think is a young earth creationist right now, at least they're not.
Yeah, but who? Like I argue, you saw me in my lecture that no
never mind.
person, no like early church person or Second Temple Jewish person thought of the flood as global. It's only it's only Ellen G. White's recent.
But you're missing my point. The narrative is such that it's so poorly written that it allowed for somebody later on to take it and go, "Oh, look, I'm going to spin this to the younger Christian narrative." When it actually says that the stuff like the ark. I mean, the ark and the animals. This is something that's not just later on. People go, "Oh, I'm gonna spin this." This is actually in there. That is what happened according to the Bible.
It also allow for scholars like, say, myself and Hugh Ross to do the same, but in a proper way.
That doesn't discount.
Well, I think both groups have it completely wrong though, because when I look at the flood, like when you actually do the credible research of it, right? I don't know if it happened or not, but what I do know is the way an ancient Jew would have looked at it is it was a mythos. It was a myth. It was a story that they would tell because there probably was a real flood, but they're looking at it theologically. They're trying to interact with the story, right? And they're trying to say, okay, this flood happened. What does it mean theologically? What is God trying to tell us?
Okay, but that then it goes back to what Scholar was asking, and I was asking, how do you differentiate between what actually is from God and what isn't in the Bible?
You have to look at the culture, and I would say you have to look at the culture and try and find out what they would have believed about those events.
Yeah, I would argue that at some point in time, okay, I will say this, that the text does evolve. Like, I'm not a Christian that says that the text is mechanically inspired, that literally every letter is what God intended to appear. No, Genesis 1:1 could have been read 100 different ways. God could have had it, written 100 different ways. But the point is that the text will take on a certain fixity, like it'll be set in stone at some point. And if God is real, he would know this. In his omniscience, he would know, okay, this will be good enough to get the job done.
Is that what he wanted?
So
God wanted the Bible.
What's good enough? It's like that's
I don't get that good enough. You're thinking an omnipotent being that is all perfect would want things perfect. But let me ask you: does
there's
God
certain
want
fine-tuning in that, right?
Well, hang on, does the God want
And
the
this goes
Bible?
to the whole fine-tuning.
Wait, does the God want the Bible and pick whatever version you want because there's so many of them? Does he want at least one Bible out there to be correct that has everything right, or does he want them to all be different and kind of confusing?
Yeah, it's the General Han Solo version. No, I'm just kidding. What these authors were doing was when they would write down, they would have like an epiphany. It's not where they would just be zapped with knowledge. And oh, look, I didn't know that, and this came from nowhere. This is like divine inspiration. No, it didn't happen like that. I don't know if I can be heard. Like,
yeah,
I can be heard. Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if that answers the question.
So, for example, have you read?
Does he want it to be right?
Yes.
Okay.
And it is right.
It sounds like he doesn't even want it to be inspired by him, the Bible. Like,
that has to be good enough.
Yeah, like, what was was it the purpose of the Bible to get the word out, or wasn't it? And if it's yes, this is a flawed way to do it. I mean, that's what it breaks down to. There's so much better way of communication. And when we talk about, like, it is flawed. What are you talking about? If someone was to read a book, like, not everybody is as privileged as we are in this modern day time to be able to look back and see history and culture. In fact, you're only talking maybe
introduced
50, 70
to
years.
cuneiform. Do you know what cuneiform is?
No, I don't.
Cuneiform is where you chisel in stone tablets of Sumerian writings and lines and
yeah, I know what cuneiform is.
Like, there's an evolution of language, an evolution of the way information is processed and communicated. I mean, it to be honest, it's quite beautiful in my opinion to see how humans have. It's just evidence for evolution. So you're telling me that God has to. Okay, wait. You're telling me that God. One second. You're telling me that God has to be like the younger creationist God. Wait, like miraculously, he just super evolves. He needs to super evolve this particular human tribe from cuneiform writing to iPad, tablet technology.
Sure. Gotcha.
And to me, that just makes no sense because now it's an arbitrary God. Like it's a God that's like the younger creationist God.
It depends on what your goals are. That's what the main difference is. What your goals are, right? Let me give you a hypothetical. Let's say, and I work in a job where I have to speak a lot of Portuguese. Okay, I didn't know Portuguese, had to learn it, practice it, get better at it till where I could communicate with it, right? But once I was able to communicate better, I was able to do my job more effectively. Now, I'm not all powerful. I'm not this amazing God who has this ability to be able to communicate people in a very efficient way instantly. And if your goal is to have better communication with your people and have this relationship with humans and save them for some reason, it's counterproductive. Like we're talking, it would be like me saying, okay, how I'm going to learn Portuguese is I'm going to learn one word a year. Now, I'll probably be dead within 40 years, so I might only learn 40 words, but isn't it how beautiful it is that I would naturally learn Portuguese by learning one word a year?
But can you show me an example in the Bible that analogy fits?
We were talking about goals. Like, isn't it God's goal to have relationships with human beings?
And he does.
Not okay. Let's just say he does. Yeah, sure, he has relationships with some people. Right? But he does this other way where he doesn't even communicate with most people. He doesn't even communicate with most societies back then. He only, like I go back to, he only spoke pretty much to a couple of people. Coincidentally, those are the people who also got all the laws that were by the society. So, like, you say he wants a relationship with human beings, but he does it in a manner that is so poor that it's unbelievable.
Well,
if you want to talk about a Christian, like a theistic guy or something, sure.
For example, Melchizedek is to this guy who, if you dissect that word Melchizedek, Zedek is a word for a deity. It's a name for a deity, the deity god. So however you look at it, either Melchizedek meaning king of righteousness or Melchizedek, king of Zedek, the point is he's just some random guy Abraham comes across, and he's a Yahweh worshiper. And Abraham's like, are you serious? And so then he gives him a tithe. Gives a blessing. So it's just moments like that in the text where we're talking, when you go from chapter 11 of Genesis to chapter 12, you're talking months transpire past each other. If you're going between, say, chapter 9 and chapter 11 of Genesis, you're talking thousands of years. We're talking at least 5,000 years between Noah at the end of the flood, 1,000 years ago, and Babel, which had been about 3,000, 4,000 BC. You're talking vast periods of time has transpired, and the Genesis account is not going to detail every moment, but it gives just enough information for us to, I would say, educatedly guess on what's going on and how things are happening and so on. And this is where the natural sciences is most important, because filling the gaps we need.
Well, I mean, we're lucky for us in this generation we can do some of that. But let me ask you this: let me in a way of communication, what would be more effective? The way things were done in the Bible, or God every night, the 5 minutes before you go to sleep, talks to every individual human on the planet, talks about his goals, his plans, the relationship that he wants with you. What would be a more effective way of building a relationship?
So you want God to literally be there by your bedside every day?
Yeah, absolutely. If he exists.
People in modern times, because I don't think if God is talking to anybody right now, because everybody who claims to talk to God, I think is kind of insane.
Yeah, so, and that didn't really answer the question, General. So, and the thing is, sure, yeah, if there's a God, absolutely. Because if all those things that comes with it, like this all-powered being that loves me and cares about me and wants me to have an eternal afterlife in heaven with him, you damn well right. I want him to talk to me every night and make sure where I'm at with him.
That's the whole
all the things he has to offer to me. Like,
you have to experience theosis in order for that to happen.
That's the fancy word that you want to. You're saying that you have to become one with God.
Yes.
No, you don't. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't know how that.
You don't have to become one unless we're limiting God's powers and his ability to communicate. Because this is what happens every time. Is every time when I talk to a Christian about this, they make him impotent. They make this God like not all powerful.
What if God could choose any what's known as kenosis, entering? He could choose any form of incarnation one day, or he could be a cloud pattern, or he could be striking a certain time to make you remember a certain moment for you to then contemplate a certain issue. Like it's just these little things in every human being's life experience that I don't doubt is a hint of God's constant awareness of your situation.
So who in modern times has had this theosis? Who has been conjoined with God and had a union?
No one yet.
No one. Okay. So how about in the past?
Let me just actually wait. I'll take that back. Jesus have, yes.
Okay, so he's the only one we have an example of that not everybody believes was who he said he was, if he even existed at all. There's obviously some mythicists out there.
And let me say this, Steve. Anybody can really answer this.
Go ahead.
So, Steve, you've been married, had girlfriends, blah, blah, blah. Would you rather, if your girlfriend or wife wanted something from you, would you rather her drop hints or just be direct and tell you what she wants?
When it comes to women, they'll never tell you what they want.
Exactly. Kind of like God.
Never. Sorry,
wait, God's a woman?
I have dated a lot. I love women to death. They're amazing, amazing, amazing. But I don't think that I've ever seen many women that are very direct. They kind of throw down the
aren't
kind of
men
thing.
that way too? Like,
no, I'm pretty straightforward with what I want. Probably to a foul.
If you love me, you just know what I want off the top of my head. No, it doesn't.
They expect us to be mind readers. You notice that women expect you to be a mind reader.
It doesn't matter.
But that's the point. Is God just isn't like he's supposedly wanting this relationship with us. He wants to communicate with us, but he does it in the poorest way, and with in my opinion, one of the most least effective ways that he possibly could.
Well, he must hate me because I've never had a relationship with him. I never experienced him, so I guess okay.
Well, I don't know what it is to have a relationship with God. I mean, even when I was a theist, I can't say I've ever had a relationship with him. I never even had an interaction with him.
If you remember my testimony video I uploaded, I myself made it quite clear that I didn't have any grand experiences ever since becoming a Christian. Well, the reason why I believe is because the data, just the dry data alone, kind of like relativity. Why do we believe and accept and use general relativity? Because it works. So when I look at the biblical text, I'm seeing that there's genuine historical fact in all of this. There's truth in it.
The general
aren't you just misinterpreting aren't you just misinterpreting the historical fact?
Yeah, well, I don't think he's misinterpreting, but historical fact. Hang on, General. Historical fact doesn't translate to the Christian beliefs.
That's why that was my question.
Correct. And theism being correct. It doesn't go to God's existence. There's no existential thing that's just because some historical context we find to be true. Cities exist. Wars were fought. Doesn't lead to anything that, to me.
Well, Jesus' resurrection is literally the crux.
But that's again something that is taken upon faith, is it not? We don't know that to be a historical fact.
Well,
right, but it's
right. I mean, if everybody knew that Jesus rose from the dead, I don't think there'd be any conversation any longer. I think that the whole discussion would be over at that point.
No, but then you see, you and I again. It comes back to the G-man analogy. There's agendas, there's misunderstandings, which then muddy the waters.
Okay, I would grant that. People would be like, okay, Jesus is the Son of God, but he wanted this. No, he wanted this. Then there'd be that kind of argument. Sure, but nobody at that point would be arguing that there was a God. They all would be theists. They would just be different types of theists at that point.
Well, even if the resurrection could be proven, there may still be a natural explanation or something else. I don't know, but to me,
Jesus himself said it's impossible for what happened to him to have happened naturally.
Well, I think that goes without saying. I don't think anybody thinks that if Jesus rose from the dead after 3 days was some kind of natural event. I don't see anybody putting forth that today.
And aren't we just using the Bible to say the Bible's true here? Aren't we just saying like isn't that just what's that? Like we're like, oh well, in the Bible Jesus said this.
Not really.
Of course.
No. Okay. So if it's not natural, couldn't I'm going to go ancient aliens here for a minute. Couldn't aliens have revived him somehow? I don't know.
Oh, geez.
Well, then aliens in this case
I'm just the question. I don't know.
Yeah, I tell you what, if ancient aliens did that, then I'm going to worship them as a god at this point. I don't even care.
At least aliens physically exist.
Just because, reasons.
Yeah. The existence of aliens can be proven because they exist physically in our universe.
Let me get this straight. It's more plausible that aliens went several billion light years or whatever to come to our planet in order to resurrect one person, so our society would have a belief that has caused how many countless deaths in our society? Is that their way of waging war against us? Then,
actually,
yeah,
this is gonna.
Never mind.
Steve, this is gonna make you.
It's a brilliant strategy. The machinations for that is probably one of the best I've ever seen for the evil plot of aliens. But I don't think that's the. I don't think that's a legit machination.
Yeah.
What's that?
Well, yeah, just let him talk.
Sorry. Steve, this is gonna make you laugh.
I don't laugh.
That plot that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
About aliens traveling and all that.
Yeah.
Ridley Scott wanted to do with Prometheus.
Really?
I didn't know that. He actually wanted to have the engineer. So he wanted Jesus to be an engineer.
It actually makes sense. It actually makes sense if they wanted to take us over a period of thousands of years by causing our own demise.
That's why they were angry.
Yeah, Stargate. At the start of the film where you see the engineer dissolve and cause life to emerge and so on. So millions of years later, obviously, billions of years later, Jesus comes down on the scene and it's like, okay, let's see how things are going. And they kill him. And what's the ramifications of killing an engineer? Well, then you have the xenomorph aliens and Predator and.
But was that an intentional thing of the aliens, or that was just something?
This is heading in a weird direction.
Hang on.
All I'm saying is
xenomorphs weren't made by them.
But there's a difference. Did the aliens actually plan that to be a type of war against us in order to take us over? Was that something that the people did?
I don't know.
Because
But all
they
I know is
aliens, and they said, "Oh, look, we don't understand them, therefore they might be of divine origin, like Stargate, or I think it was Childhood End, by Arthur C. Clarke."
Yeah, I don't know. All I know is Ridley Scott was very close to having that in his Prometheus film, but then he removed it last minute.
Interesting.
Because he didn't want to get Christian hate.
Real quick, have you guys seen Alien Covenant yet? Somebody mentioned earlier. I've not seen it yet. Is it worth watching? Don't give me any spoilers.
I liked it. I thought it was all right. A lot of people didn't like it though. Yeah, I think
I wasn't a big Prometheus fan. I thought it was made no sense, and I don't mean by the overall plot. I mean, you have this like thing rolling over a landscape, and people are kind of like running out of the way of it. I'm like, this is not physically possible in any planet.
Well, yeah, I think it was better than Prometheus by far.
Okay. The best part of Prometheus, not any spoiler, but with the last 2 minutes, maybe last 5 minutes.
Did you guys watch Noah? Did you ever watch the Noah movie?
Completely.
The Darren Aronofsky Noah movie?
Yeah, I like Noah.
Yes. It was fun. I mean, it's totally not biblical, but it's like definitely.
Which movie?
Noah by the Darren Aronofsky.
More biblical than you think.
The 2014 Noah movie. Yeah, I watched that. That was fun.
Well, I thought it was an interesting. Like they had there's like an interesting like plot twist in there where one of Noah's sons doesn't have a wife to bring on the boat, basically, and him having to deal with that.
Wow, that would have
Skylar,
that would be rough, man.
Skylar, the whole the rock monster things. They're known as the Watchers.
I thought they were the Nephilim in that movie. I thought
they were the Nephilim, right?
No, Nephilim was the Watchers of the Nephilim were different things.
No.
According to the
Watchers are not Nephilim.
Okay.
So the Watchers would be those angels that you see who then become rockborn. They're the Watchers.
Yeah, it was fun.
The mythos, the Necronomicon.
Oh wait! Right. Yeah, I just realized. Yeah, they were the products of human women and angels, right?
That was Nephilim. Right.
No, that was Nephilim. Yeah.
But
I forgot about that.
I think we're kind of winding down because I've really been trying to keep these hangouts between 2 and 3 hours because people have asked me to, even though I know a lot of people are watching. Still, they have bite size.
Don't have small hangouts.
Why? That's people see, but here's the thing: people have asked.
I disagree.
Now you're saying no, don't. It's like I can't win.
Yeah,
small is better, man. You get to make
have a large hangout. Have those things.
No, I might have a mixture, but I think I prefer the smaller, more thing. But I want to throw this out there before I forget. Because he's been messaging me. If you guys do not know yet, Kyle Curtis, who's a kind of a celebrity chef, is doing a documentary on the Great Debate Community. It's called, let's see here, Televangelism. Let me see if I can screen share this. Televangelism, Heaven, Hell, and Hangouts.
Cool.
And I'm going to screen share the. This is the what it's going to look like. Okay. Does
he already have a trailer for it?
Oh yeah. He's working all kinds of angles on this, but he's interviewing various people from the Great Debate community, including people that are tangential, like Matt Dillahunty. He's getting T.J. Kirk. He's getting G-Man, myself, and a few other people. And this is going to be a continual series that we're going to be promoting, and it actually leads into a new podcast that we're doing. Him, myself, and we're looking at Jade as a third party to do actual podcasts. We have a new domain. I'm not going to give out the new domain yet, but it's a domain for a podcast that's literally going to be talking about these subjects in a more podcast format, dealing with different types of ideas. And so we are going to go in a whole new direction in 2018. Not eliminating what we have here. Obviously, it's going to be something we're adding on. But when I say that the GDT is expanding, and I mean that exponentially, there is potential, obviously, that he's writing stuff for articles. He's making this into a production of sorts because he's watched the Great Debate Community for well over a year, maybe longer, and he found it very fascinating. And some very influential people have asked him to do a write-up, and so this is kind of leading into his project here. And so I just want people to know that going into 2018, bear with us because we have a lot of things planned. So I think this podcast is going to be great. We've got a lot of things planned for this. It's going to be kind of a cross between the Magic Sandwich Show and the Drunken Peasants in a way. So how cool is that? Yay?
Yeah. I'm just joking.
That's
awesome. But is
I know.
Dillahunty really part of the great debate community, though? Like,
what's that?
Is Matt Dillahunty really part of the great debate community?
No, that's what I'm saying. It's actually the great debate community and, televangelism as a whole. Right?
Yeah, I got it. That makes sense.
Yeah, he's also interviewing a Site 10 and a few other people. Brett Keane.
No, he's not.
Yeah,
wait, hold on. I thought Brett. What? Never mind. That's a stupid question. I mean, obviously he's always around in YouTube in some way.
Yeah, and there's a history here. I think Brett Keane has to be added. There's a history of how these things came to be, and this whole wanting to have televangelism via Hangouts and via YouTube. I mean, that's what started people like Brett Keane and G-Man to televangelize over this media.
I mean,
and then
sort of like
obviously there's going to be retorts to that. There's going to be people going, okay, let's try to rebut some of the things you're saying. And that's fascinating. That's what people watch. That's what I think is the most interesting part of the great debate community. Stuff like this.
Right. That reminds me, Skylar, where'd you find that pilot guy? The guy that was talking about astrology?
Yeah, he just left a comment on one of G-Man's videos. I just happened to see it. It was like a rebuttal video, and I just clicked on it, and I was like, "This is just gold. This is just so pure genius."
By the way, somebody had mentioned they saw Anthony Magnabosco praise me in the GDC. Thank you. I was talking to Anthony Magnabosco today. I talk to him like every other day. I know, obviously, with that suicide from the what was his name? Was it Scott? I didn't know him very well, but there's an atheist that committed suicide that kind of affected him. But and then somebody asked, how do we talk about new ideas? We choose to avoid talking about old ideas. Oh, we're going to be talking about all kinds of stuff. We're going to be talking about science of cooking. We're going to be talking about just all kinds of stuff. We've got a whole thing planned out. It's going to be very, very interesting. So.
By the way, I just been reading the outside chat. Tyler absolutely loves me. He's like, you should keep this one going, Steve. General's nonsense.
Oh yeah, Tyler loves you. Tyler loves you. Everybody loves General Han Solo. Love or hate him, right? Yeah,
I love all of you guys.
I actually appreciate General. I do appreciate General.
I don't hate any of you guys. I'm being genuinely honest here. When it comes to scientific education and so on, I actually would have you on a pedestal, all of you guys, like especially Steve as well. I'm not one for condemning or hellfire, brimstone sort of thing. I'm not even here to evangelize like you, Steve. You never see me once try and whatnot. I'm just another scientist that just happens to be Christian, and I'm just sharing my views.
But apologetics is a form of evangelizing in a way, is it not?
No, I'm just giving my reasons as to here's my rationalization of the questions at hand. That's all I've been doing. I haven't gone, hey Skylar, now you need to repent.
I was supposed to have General on my show, and I think I might have blown him off. I think he got busy. I got to have you back on one time.
No, General realizes though he's not everybody's going to take him seriously. I mean, and I think he's okay with that. I mean, come on, General. I mean, I think you're brilliant. But I know you very well. I've had many conversations with you. I know you're not an idiot, right? I mean, your level of knowledge in science is unparalleled with most people in the GDC. If they only knew how much you actually did know about physics and stuff. You know your stuff, right?
I love it I actually love it, General, when you're in the room with other Christians, especially the Bible Thumping Wingnut show and things, where you're arguing scripture with people, and I'm like, oh, I love this guy because you really the scripture much better than a lot of Christians do, and that's I would tell you, man, I would love to see more of that. I'd actually love to see General versus other Christians who don't know the Bible as well.
Yeah, but then that's the thing, they shun. I kid you not, there's one moment in the Bible thumping, this is a couple of months ago, when I wasn't intentionally wanting to do a mic drop, but it was on the whole issue of original sin, and in this case, Adam being the first man, and blah 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 and all that. So I just said, hey, in chapter 2 of Genesis, when it's described as Adam being formed from the dust of the ground, the word for form there is the word that a lot of the Jews would use to communicate what they call the Yetzer Hara, meaning the evil inclination that's in all of us, like the good and the evil. And hence the passage speaks about the knowledge of good and evil. So my question to them was, Harar appearing before the fall, the Calvinists who believe that these are perfect being, perfect humans, and then when Adam fell, then his sin, is transferred down to the rest of humanity, and so therefore we are all guilty before God in that context. But you already have a quote unquote guilty, evil inclination even before the fall. How do you explain this? And so then one guy chimed in saying, the evidence that the early Jews believed this. So I showed him one photo of a Dead Sea Scrolls scrap, and you could call this providence, providence of God that this particular scrap was, that it survived. But this particular scrap was big enough to just preserve that particular spelling of that word, nothing else. Just that word was saved, especially with the two yods that's spelt in the word. And so I said, here you go, in the Dead Sea Scrolls. And so there was complete silence for about 10 seconds. And then John Wilkinson, the guy who runs the show, is like, well, here's one of those moments where when General Han Solo says something, everyone becomes silent. So, and I'm just sitting there going, but I didn't intend that to happen. I'm not, I'm not here to, try and show off. And I'm just, it's just one of those questions that these people don't think about.
People are saying that I coddle you, General. I'm like, well, coddling is better than cuddling with, I think. So I'm okay with that.
They take it real personally too on that show. You got to remember, like they don't like to be shown they're wrong. I mean, I've done that. I've been on there a couple times where they kick me and boot me because.
I saw you on the. Weren't you on there like a couple of days ago?
Dustin Seegers. That was the first time he's let me back on there.
By the way, Kyle actually just had an interview with him as well.
Hopefully, he'll mention how he ran out.
Oh, that's right.
I haven't talked about it yet, but I'm hoping that he did because I watched that, Skylar, and I got to give you props, man. He ran from you like I've never seen somebody run before. He did not.
It was bad.
Your questions.
He was like, literally, he's like, well, you're here to attack the faith, and I was like, I was like, do you feel attacked? I was like, I'm just asking some questions about your faith. I want to understand what you believe. And like, he's like, oh no, I'm fine. I don't feel. I've got my feet all rested up here. You just said you were being attacked, and then like. He got mad because, I mean, as a Calvinist, you have to kind of bite the bullet on everything. Like, you have to just say, yeah, this is what God did. God did this awful thing and this awful thing and this awful thing. And, yeah, it was all part of his plan. This is exactly how he wanted it. But don't bring it up because it makes me feel uncomfortable. And then I think you're attacking my faith. It's like, if this is truly what you believe, why do you feel ashamed of it? Why do you feel a sense of shame when I bring up these awful things that God did and willed into existence? But it was bad, man. And then he actually started commenting on my video.
It really was.
And he backed out of the debate. He told me he was going to do a debate with me in February, and he backed out of it.
Yeah,
so we won't do it now.
Notice, Scholar, that certain systematized, like, perspective that what you've been doing was literally just poking holes through it. And again, that's why I hate systematic theology. It's just artificial constructions around what Steve was trying to get at, completely misinformed interpretations of the text.
Yeah, he tried to get, and you're right. And the key I've learned with those guys is just not to put moral judgments on it. So just ask the question, let the words speak by themselves, because if I make a moral judgment on it, then it's going to end up in a conversation where we're just talking about what I believe.
By the way, I want to give an apology out there to GeoStriber. I thought I was subscribed to him. I wasn't. I just did it now. I really thought I was because I didn't get a notification from GeoStriber because he's actually having a hangout with Anthony Riley that I did promise him I would watch. So obviously I can't watch it live because it's happening, but I will go back and check it out. So if you want to put that link in the video description, Geo, by all means, be my guest. I'm ending this soon, very soon actually. So if you want to tell everybody to go over and watch your hangout if it's still live, then I'm quite fine with that. O'Reilly isn't there anymore? Throughout this hangout, Sean Hufford had been messaging me some things about Riley. You guys are making good cases. Don't get me wrong. I think Riley says incredibly stupid stuff. I mean, Sean just messaged me that he said that well, let me see. I don't. Again, I hate to straw man, but he said that sodium is not a metal. Sodium is a salt. I don't even know how to parse that one out.
Oh, you're talking about dumb fuck of the year. How your boy Tom?
That's pretty damn stupid. First of all, salt is an ionic compound between a metal and a non-metal, if I remember correctly. But it's how does an element of a salt? Sodium is a metal.
Who said that?
That was Anthony Riley.
What in the outside chat?
No, that was in a hangout or a video or something.
Oh.
I've given up. I don't think my dude's gonna. Well, I know he's not gonna win, but I could still become a third.
I told you your guy was. Now I have to make a decision here because we're running out of time. I mean, within the second week, probably have to make a push. I could either push for Tommy, and I could probably get him another 50 to 100.
Yeah.
Okay, and I could probably put him on the top if I really did. Because I mean, I pushed a lot for Ronnie. Now, do I want to? I mean, do you think that Anthony Riley at this point has said much more dumber things than Tommy? Because Tommy's kind of a one-hit wonder. He has some stupid stuff about cancer, and yeah, I agree. Putting him out there does give him what views. People are going to maybe go to his channel. Yeah, I'm agreeing with Tommy. Like Mr. Grim V would be somebody, and his clan would be somebody that probably agrees with Tommy. Or should we just go with somebody like Anthony Riley, who he's been pretty deserving, but he did get last place last year.
Can I tell you, Steve? So, I made like the ad for my horse, and so I was like, well,
I love the flag you had there. That was great, by the way.
Thank you, man. But what I was going to do, so I was going to keep them political, keep doing political ads. So I reached out to Tommy. I was like, Tommy, listen, I don't want you to win this year. Message me because we can work together and make videos, and I'll make it look like you're the victim. Something like kind of like, you have political ads like, this character wants you to believe that Tommy Hall is the dumbest motherfucker of the year. But this character's like, and I was going to do these whole political ads, but he wouldn't write back. It was going to be fucking hilarious. I was going to literally get him in the videos to work with me. It would have been fantastic if he'd done it.
All right, so let me ask the outside chat. What do you guys think of? I mean, do you guys think that I should push for Tommy, or we should push for Tommy? Or should we should push for Anthony Riley, who's already way ahead?
By the way, I must be behind the ball on this because I have no idea who you're talking about. Like, what's the latest drama, all that?
Can I just say, too, if there are people who have already voted and we already know Ronnie's going to lose, why not go and vote for him? Let's get him in top 3.
You're not going to get Rodney in the top 3.
He's close. It's like the first 2 are like 200. Now, I haven't checked in a couple days, but it's like the first 2 are like 200. But anything 3rd and below are all within like 20, 30 votes. I thought.
By the way, is Dragon actually
making a poll? Agrippa's like, let's make Tommy a poll. Should we push for poll? Tommy.
Is Dragon debating Ronnie?
Yes, it's going to be. Here's the thing on that. That's going to be probably the second week of January, supposedly on G-Man's channel, or it could be on the Drunken Peasants. I don't know. Now, I am doing the after show. I've already told G-Man I'm doing it. He's actually even said that I'd probably do the after show. I've already got graphics for it. So we are going to analyze that like a mofo. We're really going to sit down and analyze that debate.
Or with Dragon True?
Yeah. Because I've already made. And I think that what Ronnie's going to do is he's going to try to come up with some pretty obscure things from his 345th page of the nursing handbook that he has, and try to say, "Oh, look, this shows this," and drag us to be like, "Well, you know what? I'm not even familiar with that topic." So, and then he's going to ask probably G-Man, "What the hell is Ronnie even arguing at this point?" So that's what I think is going to happen.
Yeah. So what's the topic then?
Well, again, Ronnie picked the topic, and Ronnie has a really inept ability to pick titles. This one is going to be called something along the lines of biological evolution or intelligent design, which best explains models that comport with reality, or something along those lines.
Something similar to your debate with them.
Yeah, something very similar.
I mean, one would think that he would try to alter the debate topic in such a way that it would have more of an advantage to him, right?
You would think. Well, he complained the way I argued that in my debate with him, and I'm like, my argumentation was very consistent with the topic you had chosen. So, and I think Drag is going to do exceptionally well. But again, I don't see how the overall debate can end well, because I know Ronnie is very duplicitous in this, and I've never seen him actually do a good debate. So, Drag says, what better comports to reality, evolution, abiogenesis, or ID? Oh, Drag, that is such a shitty ass title, though, dude.
Well,
God, that's so bad.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. See, this is I don't know how long you're gonna go on with the hangout, but I was just gonna bring in this. I was just gonna bring in this one issue. I don't know. Don't you feel like there's just more stuff to call bullshit on? You know what I mean?
Then what? Like what? What do you mean?
Like the whole evolution creation bit, because I feel like it's sort of like beating a dead horse.
Oh yeah, but it's always going to be around in the great debate community. You know, I've tried to expand. I'm getting the social commentary now that we have in the great debate, and I'm hoping that people like yourself, especially Wolf, will take that and start having more hangouts on the other channel. Right. I may or may not be a part of that. I don't know. I'm not that interested in politics, but now that we have that section, we can expand. But these things always will come around. We have a lot of new people joining, and so these topics do get recycled a lot. It's just the way it is.
Yeah. Well. I guess let me just amend my previous statement. I mean, because he was the guy who chose. I mean, he's more of a one-trick pony when it comes to that sort of debating style.
Yeah. Well, look what Ronnie wants to do. He wants to do the same debate that he had with me, basically with the Drag. I mean, get some originality. I'm like, look, I put it on record. I would have a debate with Ronnie or G-Man on polonium halos. Why? Because that's in my wheelhouse. That's something I kind of do know a little bit about, and I would actually enjoy having a debate on that. That's fine. I'm okay with that, right? But they don't even venture from the same thing. They want to have the same debate that they had before. This is absurd to me, and I don't blame Drag at all for debating him. I think Drag probably should, but I don't know what good of this is going to come of it. You know.
I mean, just for a quick example, right? Like just on like the interestingness of these discussions. I remember doing a video against the playing atheism on. Apparently, he was making a video response to Sean Carroll and Brian Cox about them denying the existence of ghosts and the afterlife and stuff, saying that there's little empirical support for it, and that they were being intellectually disingenuous about it. I said if he actually cared about that, what about people who sort of take advantage of like honest religious people, people like mediums or clairvoyants?
I want to get into that too. In fact, we are going to be talking in the podcast thing. One of the things we're going to be talking about is cold, hot readings. We want to get somebody like Holy Kool-Aid is a big thing on this. We're going to be branching out and talking about those very things, right? I used to do what's called chiromancy, right, which is palm reading. And of course, I never believed it, right? I always told people it's bullshit. I think when I first maybe looked at it when I was back in the day when I was like 13 or 14, and I was reading about ancient aliens, I was reading about palmistry, and I was like, oh, there might be something to this, right? But that faded really fast, obviously. Yeah. But Average Joe 11 says that he would like to do a debate as well on polonium halos. He would be my partner on this because he was an ex-nuke as well. In fact, what's funny was Average Joe was actually a engineering laboratory technician, which was a specialized form of my rate, where he actually worked on the water chemistry. That's what he did. In fact, when I told people that this guy, Sean, remember Sean, who's electronics tech? Electronic tech didn't do crap with water chemistry in the reactor. Didn't do shit with it. It was the EMs that drew the sample sometimes, but the ELTs are the ones that analyzed it. They were the water experts, and most MMs had to at least qualify that watch station. They actually had to go in and learn how to do titrations and turbidity tests and things like that nature. So, Average Joe finished his degree in nuclear engineering. That's what he is. He's a nuclear engineer. But he has seen some of the things that Sean has said, and it's complete crap, right? I mean, he was so bullshitty that he was like, oh, well, I taught water chemistry. No, you did not. You're electronics tech. It's the ELTs that taught that, like Average Joe was. But anyways, going off on a tangent here. Emperor Atheist is in live chat. By the way, I want to give props to Emperor Atheist. I had an amazing hangout with him the other day on the Geek Room. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. I think Emperor Atheist is one of my favorite people to talk to at this point. I think we had a great dialogue. There was no talking past each other. We were both understanding each other, and I was just thoroughly thrilled to have that kind of conversation. So I do want to thank Emperor Atheist for that, because that was awesome. Thank you, dude.
Yeah, Emperor Atheist would be interesting to dialogue with.
Yeah, you know what? I would actually say that Emperor Atheist and you should have a conversation. I would be totally down with that.
Well, Emperor Atheist has been liking some of my Facebook posts. That's who I am. Yeah, but
I think EA, would you be down for that, Emperor Atheist? Would you want to have a kind of a conversation with General Han Solo on one of these topics? Because I don't think you guys have ever interacted, have you?
No, I haven't really.
Christian Smith debate title is Evolution a Poo-Poo Theory. I like that, actually.
By the way, Steve, just before you end this hangout, any last comments, like in regards to the G-Man slave thing? Was what I was saying what you were?
I mean, I think you take a little bit more liberal approach, obviously, and I think you do recognize there are some issues that need to be addressed there. I think you do just kind of more bite the bullet on it.
Like what? Quickly, what did you say? Well, like how did you react to G-Man? And maybe I can judge like how I would agree or disagree.
Well, I mean,
just summarize.
Yeah. G-Man's position is that slavery is in of itself not inherently morally wrong, and I think that I take the opposite approach. I think that slavery is inherently wrong.
Okay.
I mean, do you agree or disagree on that?
No, I agree with you. I would be in the same boat.
Yeah. Okay. So Emperor the Atheist says that he can anytime. So just arrange things with me. I've got so many things coming up here in the next month. My calendar is going to be full. Hopefully, we got a lot of things planned out. So we got Prophet of Zod coming in. I think on the 18th or 19th. If you guys don't know who Prophet of Zod is, go check out his channel. He has some great stuff. His last video that he did a takedown of William Lane Craig's arguments was spot on. It wasn't a novel argument that he had, but the way he presented it was so good that I recommend anybody go and watch it. So, do you guys know who Prophet Azad is? Yeah, he only has like 1,000 subs.
The best thing about Steve McRae is that.
I'm sorry, one second. Average Joe just mentioned Witcher 3. I like that game. I started playing Witcher 3 the other day, and I tell you, I'm like level 5, and it feels like I'm already like all the way through, and I know I'm not even remotely close to finishing this. That's a long freaking game. It's a great. Oh my god, the graphics on Witcher 3 are unlike anything I've ever seen. It was a beautiful, beautiful rendering engine. What, General?
What engine is it?
I don't know what engine they use, to be honest with you. I didn't look into it. I think it could be the Quake engine of some kind. Vaporware, I guess, Max.
Okay.
But yes, oh my god, Witcher 3 is extremely well done. The acting is amazing. The voicing, it took like 2 years to make this game. The average Joe says he took him 110 hours to finish. And even then, was that with the expansions? Oh, is it Unreal? It's Unreal. It's okay. It's the Unreal engine.
Yeah, Unreal 4.
Yeah. Oh, and it's not for kids, by the way. Yeah, Witcher 3 is definitely a very adult-oriented game. Yeah.
How do you spell it?
Witcher. Witcher.
Oh, Witcher. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Amazing game. Yeah. Ober says Bethesda. He's playing a Bethesda game. I gotta tell you, I like Bethesda's games, but they are buggy as shit. They really are. All Bethesda's games are buggy. You know. But anyways, we are going down this rabbit hole again of different topics. So we're going to be ending this. I want to thank everybody for watching. This was just basically my response to G-Man because he asked me to look into this, and I told him I would. And as long as G-Man is, wanting to have a cordial conversation, I'm fine with that. Like I said, I was going to hang out for an hour. I enjoyed it. Not going to lie. So I think that if somebody's trying to make an effort to try to up their game and have better hangouts and better conversations, and I'm going to be behind that. I'm going to do that positive reinforcement because you know what? I sure the hell don't see True Empiricism doing anything like that. In fact, I see him doing just the opposite. So, because he's effectively killed his hangouts. Nobody goes in and watches stuff because why bother? So, but a lot of stuff's in the works. I wanted to thank everybody that does support me on Patreon and PayPal. I know there's some stuff changing on PayPal. Please bear with it. I am trying to get with Creationist Cat. I've talked to him a little bit on this and a few other creators. And yeah, Patreon's doing some stupid shit. Seriously. So I want to keep you guys entertained. And I
think I heard about that.
Yeah,
like they wanted to give creators more money, but it backfired. I don't know.
It's stupid as shit. They basically
Steve,
created a problem.
I have an idea for you, quick.
Well, they basically created a problem and then creating a worse problem to try to fix the initial problem. That's what they did. Go ahead, Jim.
You know what you should do? You should do a weekly Young of Creationist quote of the day. Like all our Facebook discussions, just choose the best one.
Well, we're kind of having different segments. We're when we do this podcast, we have a lot of different segments. We've got even our own domain. We've got a mail server. It's going to be Steve McRae at the show, at this particular show. I'm not giving the name of the show out yet, but we're going to go big time. And I think that Kyle is the person to do it with. I don't know what it is, but for some reason, in the last couple of weeks that I've been talking to him, I seem to trust this guy a lot. We have a very good rapport, and I don't know what it is, but there's certain people you just hit it off with. And I think this guy would be excellent to do this kind of expansion with. I think he's on the ball. We agree on just about everything. But we have the same vision, and that's what I've been looking for. So hang tight, guys. We're going to be out there. We're going to be having a lot of new people come in with a lot more great conversations. And so with that, I'm going to give somebody the last word. And since it's 50-50, whoever says the last word first gets it. Or are we going to remain quiet? Bye.